What is up, everybody? Happy Monday, and welcome to the Tip-Off, the show that sets the stage for the most important news, daily fantasy plays, and bets on tonight's 2-game NBA slate and 13-game MLB slate. I am your host, Kayla Knierim. Joining me on the last week of the Tip-Off for a while, we've got Eric Lindquist and Chris Spags. Fellas, good to see your faces on this Monday. How are we doing?
Feeling good. I feel like I just have to immediately throw the floor to Eric because I didn't even ask about his bachelor party weekend because I'm so curious about it. I did see some handsome photos of Rinpack out there on social media, which is really all I care about, obviously, from Eric's bachelor party. But I am curious to hear the details. So I just tell me, give me the good news. Let me live vicariously through a man on his dying breath of bachelorhood.
No, my voice is hanging on the thread is what it is. I'm just absolutely, after going to bed, I don't even know. But it was one of the more amazing experiences. I mean, to have all my buddies, like my best friends from high school, from college, from LA, you know, when you move out here 2,000 miles away and you get everybody back together in your home state, in the motherland, you're out on the western South Dakota, out in the wilderness. It was fantastic going into Deadwood, doing a little dice rolling, a little bit of blackjack, a little bit of the goodies with all the guys. It could not have been better. Got to play a little golf too, and beautiful part of the country. Rinpack had an absolute blast. So happy that he was able to join. He's kind of the newest guy to the crew. We initiated him kindly, so we took it easy on the young man. He needs to keep rocking DFS. He won a live seat final though on Saturday. Well, we're all playing money in a casino. He's like, oh yeah, no, I just got in the live finals. So that's cool. I was like, oh wow, what a jerk. Way to like really undercut it. It's like everything that we're doing is completely useless compared to that.
Well, I'm glad it was fun.
Oh, it was an absolute blast. And we didn't die, which was also great because after the plane incident of Tuesday. Not even a week ago. Start. It got off to a real rocky start, but we all made it together. We were all able to hang out and a good time was had.
Did anything juicy happen? We won't tell Melanie. I don't even know what that means.
Hopefully nothing literally juicy.
She's right there.
Oh, hi, Melanie. Love you. I do. And we all need to get together again soon, which
Nah, I'm good. I'm kidding. I was joking. Whoa. I was joking. No, I was kidding. Kayla, we can't wait to hang out with you again, I think. Spags, you want to come hang? I bet you do.
At some point, I feel like I might have some free time during the summer to hang out now that things are opening back up. So maybe I'll consider it. Amidst my many options.
All right. Well, my priority is to get some food with one Jordan Klein here. I'm going to go wine and dine him in a nice way at some point in time in the near future. Ooh, yes. That's the look.
And Leslie's invited too.
Oh, Leslie. Oh, dude, absolutely. Possibly out of everybody at Awesemo, the best sense of humor. Like legitimately, her wit, like she is fast on her feet. She's definitely tweets. Like the Nebraska. Yeah, you can definitely feel it. It's dude, I could not enjoy her company more. That sounded weird. I'm gonna get in so much trouble today. It's fine.
And with that, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for countless hours of content on the NBA, MLB, NHL, PGA, MMA, NASCAR, and every other sport that's in season. Get access to all the great Awesemo Plus tools and content for nearly every DFS sport out there with an Awesemo Plus weekly pass for $29.95. This includes full access to all the premium content and tools on Awesemo.com, including player projections, ownership projections, our premium Slack channel, lineup builder, and much more. If you're a new user of Awesemo Plus Platinum, then you can take advantage of the promo code we have for the show, which is TIPOFF, all caps, one word. That's TIPOFF for 15% off your first week of Awesemo Plus Platinum. Of course, if you're only interested in playing NBA DFS, then you can sign up now for our Awesemo Plus NBA weekly package for only $16.95 and our $4.95 NBA Weekly Express package, which gives you full Awesemo Plus access to NBA Showdown and single game contests. Also, MLB and NBA main slate ownership projections are free today, so that's pretty neat. Don't miss out on your chance to get a glimpse behind the paywall tonight. Woo! Is everyone still with me?
I think.
Okay.
I gave up, honestly.
At what point did you tune out? All right. Well, we're going to bring it back here for our bad beats. Eric, as we mentioned at the top of the show, is preoccupied living his best life in the Black Hills of South Dakota. So, Spags, we'll have you recap the NBA and MLB weekend for you. First, considering you split with another win on Showdown, like the boss that you are, any bad beats or only good things for you this weekend, Spags?
I did get another first place in a showdown, which I think is funny. I don't really care about this stuff because honestly, I'm never going to get to the annals of guys like our founding team, Awesemo, Tom, 1-800-EDDIE, of course, like a lot of guys who Rinpack, who were so highly ranked on the Moto Blinders rankings. But one thing that jumped out to me is like, yeah, I did have a showdown win, a first place chop with 90 people. And on Moto Blinders, that's graded the exact same way as winning 53K, which I feel like is a bit odd. Like, I'll tell you what, the money that I won from the showdown on Saturday immediately gone yesterday, thanks to Bruce Brown just getting jerked around all game long. He was a play I had 90% of, and it was not a good spot with him where he was, I thought, a very important part of the Nets have done in the series, and he was removed from the rotation, then brought back in, starting to gain life, and then Steve Nash calls it quits yesterday with about 6 minutes left in the quarter. Very odd move, one that I just didn't get when you have this team, but you live to fight another day. Same thing for me here, but yeah, Bruce Brown definitely gave that right back, and I'm just glad to help other people achieve their goals of finishing first place and winning money. That's the way that I'm going to choose to look at it every single time.
Yeah, so I recorded that game and watched it last night and was so confused. First of all, Steve Nash, probably he could do no wrong the first 2 games of the series. Like, he made every right decision. This could not have been like more ugly. Game 3 and game 4 were just complete inept decision-making by him. I know James Harden not on the floor was going to affect them as soon as they went on the road, that they probably weren't going to be riding the same momentum. They were also shooting over 44% from 3, while the Bucks were shooting down around 25%. So I was happy to have a little bit of Bucks money there. 3-point shooting is just such a big part of the NBA now. And when you see that kind of disparity between two teams, you got to be invested on the other side of it for positive regression. I know Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving make a bunch of shots, and that definitely helps. Joe Harris, one of the most efficient shooters in the NBA, but the Bucks have shooters too. They have Bryn Forbes, they have Brook Lopez, they have Chris Middleton, they have Drew Holiday. They have guys who can definitely shoot from the outside, and it was bound to happen. Glad that I was invested on the other side of it these next 2. I have no idea what to expect for game 5. My God, it's going to be a lot of fun. This whole series was always going to be fun, and I'm just glad it kind of came to fruition. Glad it's tied up at 2, and hopefully James Harden can give it a go in game 5.
Love it. Let's head on now to the NBA playoffs. The Sixers will be looking to close out the Hawks in tonight's game 5. And Joel Embiid is currently questionable for the umpteenth consecutive game. Assuming he plays, how much Embiid is too much Embiid? And who else sticks out to target from the team tonight? Bachelor for not much longer, Eric.
There we go. Joel Embiid. 10-5. We're starting to get up there on DK a little bit. I still want to be there. I still want to be invested there. I can't imagine 10-5 on DK is going to get like where the ownership has been here the last couple of games. I mean, no, he was under 10%, I guess, that first game because a lot of people didn't expect him to be there. It was kind of a late rule in, I guess, 30 minutes before lock or so, and was able to get way over top of the field there. But today, I still think that you have to be prioritizing him at a center spot. Like Rudy Gobert, 7,400. It's interesting what the Clippers did going small. We'll get to that a little bit later. Clint Capella's coming in with a bunch of ownership. Not super enthusiastic. Those minutes are starting to come down a little bit here as Atlanta's trying to go a little bit smaller in spots. Only 28 minutes for him the last 2, but at the center spot, Joel Embiid just sticks out so much more relative to the position, whereas like Kawhi Leonard, 10K. Paul George is definitely still at a discounted shooting guard, but like amongst the spend ups on this entire slate, I mean, I feel like it's Donovan Mitchell and it's Joel Embiid, and that's kind of the 2 guys I'm going to be prioritizing tonight.
The last time we had Joel Embiid on a slate, I was really above the field on him and was lighter on Nikola Jokic as a result. That ended up not being the right move. But on this slate, I don't know what kills you with Embiid, where I don't know what the alternative is, where those guys are similar price tags, and similar, kind of cast with their median projection with Joel Embiid and Nikola Jokic. But there's no Jokic on the slate. It's either Clint Capella or it's Rudy Gobert, or it is going to be Joel Embiid. And I think in this spot, I think there are going to be some lineups that look good without Joel Embiid, and I'm willing to play those lineups. But to me, to be under the field on Embiid just doesn't seem like a move that I'd want to make, because at the position, there's really not a lot of guys who can get to where he's going to get, barring really outlier efforts from guys like Capella or Rudy Gobert. So to me, the raw points do matter on a slate like this one. And I imagine I'll have Joel Embiid in at least half my lineups, if not a little bit more.
The Hawks will be depending upon Trae Young to take them to game 6, but he's not the only one on this, garnering super high ownership on tonight's 2-gamer. Who else from this Hawks group will you be over or under the field on, Spags?
This is a tough team to move away from on the slate, where John Collins, I've chronicled on these shows my struggles with him over the course of really the last few weeks, where he keeps popping up for me. Price tags continue to look good. And he's last game was really materially hurt by Danilo Gallinari being a guy who just is going to put up the shots. And in John Collins, it's so frustrating to watch these games where if they are watching game tape here, and I have to, I'm going to go on a limb and I'm going to say if the professional basketball team is sometimes watching game tape, when they watch the tape, they just have to see John Collins over and over again, waving his arms from 3-point range. And I know know people out there maybe don't think John Collins is a great 3-point shooter, but he's a 40% shooter from deep on the year. Like, he was a guy who's not getting a ton of volume, but still's knocking him down, and they just don't even look his way. And I think at some point, I would imagine where if I'm observing this, I think at some point, John Collins, a guy who's been known to complain a little bit, will go like, hey guys, I can also shoot threes and you never even look at me. And I think that's something that maybe they address a little bit more today. So I will be with the field on a very chalky John Collins. He'll be the highest owned guy on FanDuel, and the rest of the team too. I think you can make cases for everybody's in the rotation. Trae Young still looks fine, though. The double teams, more Ben Simmons defense not been great for him overall. Clint Capella losing some minutes to the Gallo lineups, I think, is not the best, but he still looks like a solid play. He's probably a little bit under-owned at 25% expected ownership. And then Bogdan and Gallo too, just right there in range as plays that certainly have the upside, especially if Collins does fail. So to me, the Hawks are a team to have a lot of today, and just hope that they can somehow win this one, or at least, keep it competitive with them being a 3-point home dog.
I'm going to have 0 John Collins today.
Oh, no.
And here is my thinking for such things. Right now, we're seeing him around 45%. And I think that that's about correct. And I think the boom bust tool is fantastic. I think on a 2-gamer, you got to be making stands. You got to find ways to get different, and you have to find paths. Look at his box score the last time out. He literally put up 14 shots, made 10 of them, over 2 from 3. So maybe he can make a couple more threes, but 7 boards. He has a near 0% assist rate on this basketball team with everybody in play there. There's just no way for him to get on top of this if he's not going to be playing more than 35 minutes, because it's all points and rebounds. He should have the ball about as efficiently as you can against Philadelphia, a really stout defensive team, 10 for 14, 7 boards, 23 total points, and only got to 30.25 on DK. I feel like this is the spot where I want to get different, because that box score, I don't see him getting more than 14 shot attempts, sharing the floor with Bogdanovich, sharing the floor with Trae Young. Like, he's not going to be the offensive priority. And if he's not going to get a double-double, there's no way that I can see him really getting to 35 plus. We haven't seen it against Philly. Tough interior defense. This is my big stand of the entire day on this slate. I'm going to have a lot of lineups today. I took 4 days off. I'm feeling good, feeling refreshed. I'm going to have 0% John Collins today, and that's my big fade of the day.
Well,
I'm upset at this, because this is really this is going to be my make or break spot. And right away, Eric's just coming back from a bachelor party and shitting right in my mouth with these takes.
So, if you want to rebuttal, I definitely understand points from a point per dollar projection. I am not going to sit here and beat that in, but I just don't see the ceiling. And so for a 2-gamer, if I'm trying to find a way to get different, he's right now the highest owned player on Atlanta right now. Out of everybody, he's the 2nd highest owned player on Draftkings right now. I see a huge fade in my future, because I just don't see how he gets to 35 more, because he needs to shoot the ball more than 14 times. And he shot about as efficiently as you humanly possibly could last time out.
Yeah, I think the logic, I think that's the part that hurts me the most, is that the logic is completely sound. And I also know that John Collins has hurt me so many times, but I'm going to be there today. And I agree.
Yeah.
I think if you were doing, if John Collins is in a lineup, you give a boost to Gallo, or to me, I'm going to try to probably sort my lineups in that way, where I'm going to have X amount of lineups without John Collins, and I'm going to try to get Gallo into those lineups. I think that's the move, is just taking the pivots to Collins in some amount. But I think at the price tag, like we've seen with guys like Jay Crowder recently, like some of these ones, Maxi Kleber in the last round, where just sometimes the price tag is what you need to get to where, the rest of the lineup to work in the right way, and actually just get the optimizer to give you the guys that end up in a winning lineup. I think that's really where John Collins has the best weight, is that, his price tag is going to allow you to get the other guys who need to. And I think that, to me, is why I will still be with the field. But I think Eric is certainly raising a point here. That's a very logical one, about if you want to get different from the field right away, especially on FanDuel, just you don't play John Collins, and you are going to be different from almost, 60%
everybody. Yeah.
Well, I, for one, am excited to see how this plays out tonight.
I'm not anymore. I didn't know we were going to be on the poles. I'm on the North Pole. He's on the South Pole. We ain't seen each other today. Yeah.
All right. The Jazz are 5.5-point dogs in Los Angeles tonight, looking to take a 3-1 lead on the Clippers after getting beat down in Game 3. Is there some value to be had betting them in this spot? And from a DFS angle, what are the implications of Conley being ruled out on your lineups, Eric?
This is just hot take Eric Day. So,
hit us.
I'm already super invested in the Clippers. I'm about to be invested even more. No, Mike Conley is a gigantic deal for this basketball team. 5.5 is way too low of a number. And I'm not just talking about recency bias, but what I'm talking about is the ability that having Nicholas Batum in that starting unit, who can actually keep Rudy Gobert is not an offensive threat. Like, he's not somebody that I'm worried about. He's an offensive rebounder. He can get there that way. He had to play a lot of basketball on the perimeter. And if you make him play basketball on the perimeter with Marcus Morris and Nicholas Batum in that starting lineup, you have no Zubats out there. I just think that Kawhi Leonard and Paul George can go absolutely nuts in this spot. Once again, Paul George, he's getting a lot of flack. And I know he's been bad here in some spots. I know that game 1, but he's been pretty good on the whole. Like, it's really just him underneath a microscope at this point in time. I think people have a lot of negative impressions on him. And plus it's not like we're seeing that ownership low on Paul George. So I don't think people are like looking at that as a major deal. But for me, I just don't know how I want to be laying 5.5 points, or how I don't want to be laying the 5.5 points here with the Clippers, because 5.5 for Utah without their guy who basically won them that Memphis series flat out on his own in a lot of ways. I mean, he was spectacular. This is a huge missed piece for them. Now that he's already been ruled out here again, I'm going right back to the well on the Clippers.
So to me, I do think Utah can win this one. The way that they win it, though, is going to be just brute force of Donovan Mitchell, I think. And that's the part that I'm going to, try to pin my hopes to, is that the ankle injury he had, I have to have faith that's not going to be the biggest thing. And for Mitchell, who's been really just dying to play and, had that controversy earlier in the playoffs where his teammates thought he should be in, he thought he should be in, he wasn't in. I think he's going to grit it out here. And obviously, you would say he probably should, given the fact that there's a big difference between a 3-1 series lead and a 2-2 series. And I think that's something that Utah will be very aware of. And I think, too, the odds for Utah going up quite a bit. I know we're going to talk more in the Awesemo Tells the Future segment about that, but I am a believer in Utah, I guess, and I think that's the main thing for me, where Mitchell is a big part of it. And Mitchell having 40% usage the last few games jumps off the table to me, where if you give him that usage rate, he's going to look like one of the stronger players on the slate, even though I think if people just kind of treat him like he's been all season long, he's not been quite where he needs to be at this price tag of $9K on DraftKings. But to me, he's a really solid play today. And I think the rest of the Jazz, nobody really jumping out crazy to me. I do like Joe Ingles more in the field, where for some reason he projects for single-digit ownership on DraftKings. That's hopefully, I'd assume, something that could change here. Same thing for Jordan Clarkson, but to me, taking Donovan Mitchell and taking one or two other Jazz pieces are really an interesting move, especially if somehow guys like Clarkson and Ingles end up under 10% owned. I don't see how that would be the case, but right now it's the projection, and that would definitely make these guys pop up a lot more for me.
The Clippers finally came out and put the hammer down in Game 3, as inserting Nicholas Batum in the starting lineup and forcing Gobert more to the perimeter worked out phenomenally well. Can they replicate Saturday's performance? And Spags, who on this team will you be rostering the most?
I think this game, to me, like, well, the way I'm seeing it is that Eric's takes, I think, about the Clippers maybe learning something and being able to attack and just, how they're going to figure out their approach, I think is perfectly viable. The difference is that I see this potentially being a shootout, where can Utah keep up? I guess, can Donovan Mitchell keep up with two guys, or can Ingles and Bojan and Jordan Clarkson pull enough weight to basically do the job of one other superstar? And I think they can. That doesn't necessarily keep me from thinking, yeah, Paul George is like one of the strongest players. I don't get his price tag at all on DraftKings. I don't know why it's so low. I don't know why Kawhi is so high relatively. These guys should really be close at this point in terms of their price tag, but Paul George can be very chalky. We all know the playoff P narrative of him, maybe underperforming in some spots, but the volume is there for him. The opportunity is there. And I don't necessarily buy into the longer term narrative. So I'll be with the field on his ownership, I think, at least. And Kawhi as well. I would like to probably be at a similar number for Kawhi. It might be tough based on the slate overall, but he's going to be 33% owned. Paul George is going to be over 50. I think it's sort of logical to want maybe a little bit less Paul George and a little more Kawhi, but both guys to me look strong. And honestly, Batum and Morris still very solid plays, as Reggie Jackson. I think this game, just really loading up on this game, is a move that I find really appealing today.
Yeah, agreed. And I think the minutes are going to be out of this world in a close game. We saw that last one blow out towards the end. So Paul George ended up playing 38 minutes instead of the 44 he played the one before. So I'm looking right now, I'm projecting them for 43 minutes apiece. I don't recall ever really doing something like that. So I'm just really enjoying that. I'm almost like 3 or 4 minutes more even than Awesemo has them plugged in for, because I think that potential is there. This game is going to be competitive in a lot of different ways, I'm sure. I mean, I'm hoping the Clippers can just blast the doors off of them. And, then you're probably getting big games out of Paul George and Kawhi Leonard anyway, which are kind of the main guys. But on the other side of it, Donovan Mitchell, I do like a lot too. Going to be firing that up. Also, Kayla, what in the world did you swat in the middle of Spags during the course of that thing? I don't know if Spags noticed, but I noticed, and I've been curious. I've been thinking about that the entire time I've been talking. What did you whack?
What did I swat?
Yeah, you swatted. There was like that was going on. Jordan heard it. I heard it.
I did?
Yeah, I heard something. I'm gonna have to go back and watch the tape.
Just want to
watch
hit me while I was talking and couldn't control herself physically. Is that the way?
Yeah, no, she was just like waking herself up, just smack her.
No, I chewed part of my fingernail off.
Oh, I got to hear that on a mic. That's fantastic. Let me just tell you, it doesn't sound great.
ASMR is so in vogue right now. Finally, Awesemo getting into that business.
I had like a little hangy thing and I just had to like bite it off. Sorry.
We are.
You don't want that reaction.
No, I hate this. I hate whatever it's called. It's disgusting.
Okay. Well, it's ASMR and it's lovely.
What happened to like ocean wave
today, Kayla?
Ew, no.
No, that's not working either. Great. Awesome. Now you know how I feel.
We once had a bit that I did on my show with Peter Overs at Splash Play where we talked about like if we just did episodes like talking like adult babies for an entire show, like but doing fantasy football analysis, would there be a market there for somebody? And I feel like for ASMR, there's like a more logical market where if we did like ASMR betting and DFS picks and it was just all whispering and Kayla like I don't know making mouth noises and such, like we'd probably make a killing. I'm sure there is a market for that.
Okay, this is our last week, so let's get off the rails. Who has the best baby impression of this group? Kayla, you start. Baby sound, baby voice, and we'll have the chat vote. We can go 1, 2, 3. Kayla first, me second, you third. Spags.
Best baby. There's a reason I didn't excel at acting because I hated improv. Because
it's just make a baby noise,
like crying,
laughing,
whatever. Any baby, they make a lot of noises.
They make lots of noises.
Someone else go first.
They're rangy. Okay, I'll go first. Whatever. Number 1. It's fine. I don't know. There's something like that.
Baby who likes to Los Angeles Clippers. Go play ball. Now he's a big boy.
There you see, look, somebody out there just had an accident in their pants.
That was great. Kayla, bring it home. Bring it home.
I don't know how to talk like a baby. I talk to babies like a baby, I think.
Oh, give me the baby.
Oh, so cute. See, it's bad.
Hello, sir.
You're talking to him like a polished 28-year-old adult. That's like trying to like in a job interview. Hello, baby. How are you?
Good to meet you, baby.
Yeah. So health insurance. You should definitely be signing up for that and getting the premium.
I have no idea what's going on here.
We're just having fun. That's all, Kayla.
Okay.
Also, don't chew your nails on a mic. That sounds like
I didn't even know that was loud. Sorry.
It was fantastic. I'm going to go back and watch the tape. Go back and watch the tape.
Well, I wasn't on camera, was I? It was in the Zoom.
You were on mic. I know that.
Okay, well, did everyone else see that? Sorry about that. Also, you mentioned mouth noises. My biggest pet peeve when watching The Bachelor, Bachelorette is when someone hasn't had enough water and their mouth smacks, and when they kiss and it's just like that noise. Oh, I hate it so much.
That was like last week when I had like my throat was like a little bit phlegmy and Kayla's like, yeah, we all needed to hear your phlegm. It's like, wow, that's like the harshest Kayla ever was. Cause I didn't clear my throat. And I sometimes, I smoke a lot of things. Sometimes I get the back up.
Edgy Kayla is the best Kayla. I like Kayla a little unfiltered because she's so polished. She's so nice. I have a
few pet peeves, and you will definitely know what they are.
Okay. One of them is recommending vampire shows.
One of them is that, and one of them is mouth smacking.
Mouth smacking? Like
no, like when you eat and you don't have enough water, or when you just talk and you don't have enough water.
Oh, okay.
Like we've got to get the ladies and fellas like more water on The Bachelor and Bachelorette. I don't know what.
That's fair. They're
drinking. You know what else? They're not mixing in waters enough, I think would be my main observation.
Yeah, totally. They need more weirdness than, one person dating 50 people.
Someone said Mucinex. Yes, that helps also clear up all the Spags maybe for you.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, look, I'm always down to do some fun new drugs. So leave your recommendations in the chat for whatever I should be doing now.
All right. No, please. I'm always like queen of frog in your throat. I always have something going on. So I get it. It's fine.
Queen of frog in throat. Queen emoji, frog emoji. And there's no throat emoji. I just grounded frog. Anywho, we are on a show, I guess.
Yes, I guess we are. We should probably get back to it. Hey guys, don't forget to give us a like and subscribe so you can keep up with all of our shows, DFS offers, giveaways, and much more. Once you subscribe, hit that notification button to get alerts when our shows go live. It is now time for Awesemo Tells the Future. The Suns are through after a sweep of the Nuggets, and the Jazz and Clippers could be grinding it out to the bitter end based on Game 3. With a long layoff in store for the Suns, how do you feel about betting the Suns now at their current odds on OddsShopper without knowing for sure who their opponent might be? And any other bets that stand out to you as the NBA playoffs near their end? Eric, we're going to start with you. Before we do, I want to go back and run the tape. There was a show we did back in March, February, where I brought up the Suns to win it all, and I got laughed at. And look worth.
I would have never. I was actually very much. I recommended that pick too at one point. So that wouldn't have me. That must have been a Greg show. Classic bully Greg.
Classic.
Greg,
yes.
nerd ass, whatever. It's fine. Yeah, no, I definitely know that out of all of us on this panel, that Greg is the most invested in the Suns. So he had like a 28-1 ticket, 35-1 ticket. The guy is living the high life. But I still think betting Phoenix in this spot, I definitely am interested, even at 425. I think we talked a couple weeks ago, the three of us as well, that I didn't see an opportunity against the Lakers where I could really hedge out. I thought Anthony Davis was hurt. He was at plus 850, and it was actually up to 900 there for a second, and was able to get a little bit of coin in on that, which was awfully nice because, I'm obviously very heavily invested in the Clippers, and I'm begging for the Clippers to get there so that I can kind of just guarantee myself a nice W no matter what on that side. But even at plus 425, I think because you're going to look at the Clippers and it's just going to be a difficult end of this series. And right now, where the Jazz are at, plus 400 over on OddsShopper for the finals win, plus 900 for the Clippers. I still probably am going to be firing a little bit Clippers because that's going to be closer to 50-50 here coming out of this game. I'm assuming as long as the Clippers can handle business the way that I think they can. Winning the West, I think I'm going to just kind of wait because you're looking at them, Phoenix plus 145, same number as Utah. I think that's about appropriate. And the Clippers, plus 350, that'd be fine just in terms of getting out of the West because I'm already invested on those sides of it. The only way that I'd really go a little bit heavier would be through the finals winner.
I think the one that jumps out is going to be Derek's Clippers here, plus 900 to win it all right now. That's too low. Like it just shouldn't be right there.
Yep.
And I think if they do win tonight, I do have my reservations. I think there's a chance to go down 3-1. But if they were to go down 3-1, we've seen people I think who were weaker than the Clippers overcome that just last year, including this Denver team who got swept this week. But I think the Clippers in this spot, like I wouldn't mind them if they lost this one. I think if you got even better odds in that situation, I'd still be willing to go there. But today, plus 900 when the nearest one to them is going to be the Sixers at plus 600. I just think those aren't efficient odds. And the Clippers, to me, as well as the Lakers we talked about a lot throughout the year, they were a team that I feel like was a little bit overvalued, and now it's completely swung the other way where they're undervalued. So that bet to me, I think, is one that really jumps out, and one that I also just wouldn't take. And it's funny because I definitely got a little bit of Twitter heat from this one when we talked about it on the show, and it wasn't anything that we said negatively, but it was like with the Brooklyn Nets odds, I was like, yeah, I don't know. There's like a lot of contingencies that have to go down there. And this is before the Harden injury, but I had mentioned like, oh yeah, like Kyrie, there's a chance like he's a guy who has a lot of things that he's aware of socially and things that just strike the wrong nerve with him. I thought that was a risk profile, but we didn't even account for the injuries. And people were like mad saying like, oh, the Nets, how are they not the title favorite? It's because there's question marks with them. At plus 300 now, you're not getting any discount to bet on the Nets at all. And if anything, you're paying basically the exact same freight you have all year long for them to be a title winner. So they are a bet to me that I wouldn't make in a million years right now because I think there's a chance they end up blowing the series if they don't get Harden or Kyrie back next game. And in this spot, to me, I think that's one bet I wouldn't take. And on the other end, the Clippers, I think, are a really, really strong bet right now.
If Chris is watching, he needs to trim, edit that, post on Awesemo immediately. That was good stuff.
I concur.
Good stuff.
All right. Anything else we want to say about this before we move on?
I think that about covers it. I mean, I think you're looking at a spot where if you're not invested in the Clippers already, get in now at plus 900 because this is a home game, 5.5 point favorites. And you can basically hedge out of that position in a number of ways in game 5, as long as they win. And you're making a lot more than just making a minus 110 bet on them to cover the 5.5 today for the Clippers. So you're getting an awful lot of extra money on top of that that you could be basically hedging out of in game 5 and getting into that final spot. You're getting so much better than plus 900 of value there.
Chris says he's watching. Hi, Chris.
Perfect. Always watching. Look at the baby. Anyone? Movie?
Oh, I thought we were just asking for more baby voices, and I was
like, please no, not back to the baby voices.
Old school Vince Vaughn. No big.
You guys.
What am I hearing?
There is the loudest noise happening outside of my apartment right now. I have no idea what's going on.
Oh, it's probably natural gas, if I had to guess.
That just scared me to death. I am so sorry. It is so loud right now. I don't know what's happening.
It sounds like the ocean, actually.
It sounds like you're being pressure washed.
That's exactly what it sounds like.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's get into. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
It's workable. It's not great. It's workable.
We could do it.
Of course, I forgot to shut my door before the show. Well, this is distracting. Okay. Biggest bet. It is now time to head to the diamond for some of the top bets and plays on tonight's MLB DFS slate. Which of these top 5 odds getters on OddsShopper do you think is the best overall bet to hit a home run tonight? I am yelling.
Working at the car wash. Working at
It's crazy
the car
this show's
wash.
going on hiatus. I don't know why.
I mean, okay, we've got Nelson Cruz plus 200. Miguel Sano plus 220, Josh Donaldson plus 230, Fernando Tatis plus 240, Kyle Seager plus 280. I'm going to go shut my door while you guys discuss. BRB.
Okay, I'll go first for this one. And I think it's interesting to note that it is all of Eric's Twins in this spot, because the Twins are a team that I've beaten the drum for on all the shows today, on the strategy show for MLB, on the deeper dive right before this one. I mentioned the Twins, and the things that jump out for me with Marco Gonzalez, where he is just getting hit real hard this year, a 16% barrel ball rate, a 19-degree launch angle. And it's weird because the Vegas total doesn't make sense to me to indicate that. It's only 4.2 implied runs. But the fact you're seeing all the Twins guys here, A, gives me hope for the DFS stack today. So, A, play more Twins. I think I've been trying to beat that drum all day. But B, like, these guys I think are really strong picks, and it's sort of hard to just choose one. Nelson Cruz disappointed me so many times against lefty pitching, but I think this spot is the one for him to get off here. So it'd be nice if he got plus 200 odds. And for that reason, I wouldn't mind going Sano or Josh Donaldson, just because those guys are not that much different of a play. Like, they're going to benefit from going against Marco Gonzalez. That's the main thing. But Nelson Cruz has just been so due to hit a lefty bomb for a while now that as long as he's in the lineup, I haven't seen if it's been confirmed throughout the course of the show, but as long as he's in there, I think that's a really strong bet and a strong pick.
So the Twins suck this year, but it has nothing to do with their lineup. It has nothing to do with the power that exists. So 11% barrel percentage, leading the major leagues. 471 expected slugging percentage, leading the league. Absolutely ridiculous numbers that they have for a team that's as bad as they are. 42.9% hard hit percentage, basically tied at 43% with the Yankees and Blue Jays. Like, the Yankees have been sliding, but the Blue Jays, we know how potent they've been. You're getting basically the same amount of value on that, and it's a team that just crushes lefties. So I love your call on being on the Twins. I think from a stack perspective, I really like going to their direction. You're probably getting too short of odds to try to pick and choose between which one of those three is going to be the one who goes off. I'll probably go to Tatis and just eat the mega chalk. This might be a spot where, if on Fanduel, if you're playing a lot over there, 5,000 right now for Fernando Tatis, it's harder to pair him and have like a doable stack. You can make him your one-off, but he's going to be popular no matter what. Playing and pairing him with like a Glasnow or a Lynn is going to be very, very difficult. So I'm going to kind of prefer to just maybe take that bet, place 240 there, go that direction, have my exposure to Tatis, because even at 5K, if he hits one bomb, it's not going to kill you.
All right. I'm back. The noise has gone away, of course. It sounded like a Learjet was just hovering over my apartment. That has literally never happened before, but of course that would happen right now, right?
The chat was saying that you were being attacked by ASMR, which I think is funny. It's like, I guess
actually, yes, that's exactly what that was.
Love
just it. Turned up. All right. Which of these top 4 odds getters on OddsShopper do you think is the best strikeouts over or under bet tonight? For biggest arm, we've got Tyler Glasnow, 8.5 strikeouts, Lance Lynn, 7.5 strikeouts, Austin Gomer, 5.5, and Kenta Mata, 5.5. Eric, we'll start with you.
So I'm going to take the under on Kenta Maeda. He's coming back. He was limited to only 64 pitches. I like the under on 5.5 here in that spot. I still like the over on Tyler Glasnow. And I was writing, had my first MLB slate starter ever yesterday, which was a lot of fun to be able to put together, putting the initial thoughts of the MLB slate starter out there. But basically anything on 8.5 for Tyler Glasnow, I'm still going to be smashing the over of. We're going to find out very, very quickly which one of these aces have been using stuff and which ones haven't. It doesn't seem to me like Tyler Glasnow has. I was trying to basically find any kind of connection he had to it. I know people were saying 80-90% of pitchers using sticky tack or this spider tack or whatever the heck it is. And so I think that we're going to see a lot of alarming things. Yesterday, Shane Bieber, that was the one that came to mind where I was like, whoa, 10 hits, 2 homers. I mean, these are things he's done before, still got 8 Ks, but it's going to be very, very noisy here on the front end. But I think taking some shots and figuring out which one of these aces, might have some massive regression, might make for a really, really low-owned stack going forward. Probably don't need to do it on a 13-gamer, and I'm definitely not going to do it against my favorite pitcher in the league, Tyler Glasnow.
Yeah, and I would say for me, the one that I would take the over on is going to be Lance Lynn. I just feel like the pitch counts there for him. He's not quite as good of a strikeout pitcher as Glasnow, and I'd have no issue taking that bet too. Actually, mentioned that as being one of the prize picks that I thought was pretty good today was Tyler Glasnow's numbers on there. But Lance Lynn, a 28% K rate on the year, and the thing that makes him stand out more is that he should have an easier strikeout matchup in this spot going against Tampa Bay, who's got a 26% strikeout rate on the year. This particular lineup they have expected out there today is 26% as well, so it's not like you're getting a downgrade. And that to me is the thing with Lynn, is that he's just the guy who doesn't kill you. I think he's going to pitch deep enough into games, and he also works. Actually, I guess he and Glasnow both work reasonably fast. Both guys about 4 pitches per batter face, so that's a decent mark for both of them. But I think they're both really strong picks, and Lance Lynn, I think, a solid one. And I'm just going to give a shout out to Austin Gomber here too, just to revisit.
I put it in there for you.
Yeah, just I talked about on the MLB shows. I made my case for DFS plays, but I think there's a pathway for him to be useful in DFS. The strikeout prop, maybe not the most appealing option, but I think to me, if you want to hedge against Gomber and play him a little bit in DFS, play him 5% in DFS today because nobody's playing him at Coors, and then just take the under prop and his strikeouts. I think that's one way you can hedge here if you want to take a little more risk in DFS, and I think that is generally the way that I would like to play for baseball in particular.
When you brought that up on the strategy show, because I was able to tune in today, don't always get a chance to when we're making the run sheet and going across, but you brought that up and I thought you were a dum-dum and we were never going to be friends ever again. But 5.5 strikeouts is way more than I expected to see for Austin Gomber. And the Padres, they're the 4th lowest team in terms of K percentage over here on the season, just as a team. So like, I was very surprised to see a lefty up against this team with Machado and Tatis. And Tatis was out for a big portion of it. We're going to see those Ks go up here. He does smash the ball, but he also strikes out. 5.5 was a bigger number than I expected. And just that alone, knowing that the mid-range is basically just a pick your poison kind of a spot today, taking shots on him. Why not take a shot on a 1% Austin Gomber? If that K prop's going to be 5.5 and Vegas is basically saying, hey, we expect him to, he's a ground ball pitcher as it is. Like we have a possibility of having a really low owned guy. There's no way I want to take over a 5.5, but I put that in there to basically bring him up because you were very, very sharp in your assessment of him.
Yeah, and I agree that the strikeout props, home run props, always good indicators. Even if you don't want to take the bets themselves, always worth checking out an odd shopper to see just what these bets are, because something like the Twins, that's a stack that people honestly throughout the industry, I'm surprised not talking a lot about today. And it's people just sometimes don't see the same stuff, so I totally get it. But just definitely checking out the home run props, checking out the strikeout props on odd shopper. In addition, just shopping for the best lines, like it does give you a good lead on how at least Vegas is thinking the slate has a good chance of working out.
All right. And now we head back to B-ball for No House Advantages prop or not. Here are some of No House Advantages props of the day for key NBA players. Fellas, do we like the over-under on these props? And how many points would you assign? We're going to start with Jordan Clarkson, 24.5 points plus rebounds plus assist bags.
So Jordan Clarkson is kind of a tough one for me to pinpoint. And I think the issue with him is that the minutes still come with some volatility and just generally his ability to contribute in multiple categories, I think comes with some risk where like points plus rebounds plus assists, he can give you a few assists. He does get a slight assist bump to just shy of 20% assist rate without Mike Conley on the floor. But I don't have the confidence in that quite as much as I would maybe just a straight assist prop or a straight points prop. It looks like Awesemo has this one at having just basically a 50-50 shot of hitting over or under, I guess a little bit higher towards the over 52%. But those kind of plays to me in No House Advantage, ones that you're not making core plays, but I think mixing it in as a 1-pointer, a 2-pointer in some lines would be a good move. And to me, take the over in some, take the under in others. Like it's that close. But I guess if I really had to choose here on the spot, I know Awesemo has it going over. I would take the under, but I think there's definitely a pathway for it to hit. So just kind of try to play both sides if you can on NHA.
Yeah, I think Clarkson in the under here is looking really good. And I think Awesemo does have that at the moment here, sitting at 24.5. It refreshed, I think, just accounting for everything here at the moment. Maybe I need to hit refresh. Maybe it updated and I didn't end up seeing it, but yeah, it did update here. Originally, the projections. So if you were making lineups earlier, it had Mike Conley as in. Now we officially got him out here. I think Jordan Clarkson, looking at this number, it's very, very 50-50. I think the minutes are going to spike up. He's a guy that I'm willing to be playing a little bit in DFS around the industry, but on NHA, we don't really necessarily have to worry about anything other than the combination, other than what that line is at. And I think mathematically, you should be looking at a small under here, basically a 1 or 2 pointer. Make sure that you're basically, if you're going to take an under on him, look at how that, what that looks like for other players on the floor. What would that be for Bogdanovich? I mean, Jordan Clarkson is basically just so scoring dependent. So maybe taking an over on a points prop for him. Donovan Mitchell, obviously somebody that we can be taking overs on constantly, but definitely kind of a stay away or a 1-pointer for me over on NHA today.
Next, we've got Nicholas Batum, 12.5 points plus rebounds plus assists, Eric.
So he got inserted in the starting lineup and he was, he just kind of made it work, I think, for the Clippers. And they needed to mix something up after the first 2 games of that series. They basically, it made sense that Zubats would be the starter. I mean, you have Rudy Gobert out there, the defensive player of the year, but what happens is Rudy Gobert is so effective at the rim, and he is so amazing at being able to guard in the pick and roll. So just put him out on a wing, isolate him out on a wing. Nicholas Batum and Marcus Morris, if they're able to knock down shots, Reggie Jackson's knocking down shots. I mean, this team gets really, really dangerous really quick. Basically neutralizes the best part that Utah has on their defense. You don't win 3 defensive player of the years in 4 years without being an absolute stud underneath the hoop if you're a center. So let's pull him out to the wing and see what happens. Nicholas Batum is kind of going to be the guy who's the main beneficiary of those minutes, of those numbers. We saw him get inserted into the starting lineup, as I said, got all the way up to 35 minutes, I believe it was last game. Just a massive, massive number of minutes. Marcus Morris a little bit lower comparatively, but also the blowout kind of trended towards that. Didn't come back into the game, I believe, after 2 or 3 minute mark of the third quarter. Didn't even come back in at all. So Nicholas Batum, give me the overs on everything.
Yeah, I would agree here. I think Batum does benefit from a few things, in addition to one of them, I think, being that he normally gets, when he is a starter, gets this earlier second shift in the second half than a guy like Morris. And I think that's what you're referring to a little bit there, is that Morris coming a little bit later. If the game's out of hand, you're going to at least see Batum on the court, and then you might not see some other guys get on the court. But overall, I'm with it. I think Batum, the minutes have been there. I think the Clippers tried out the Zubac approach, and even though Zubac was really good in game 1, I feel like he just hasn't captured that magic since then. And maybe that is a spot to be a little contrarian for DFS today, but for no house advantage, you just kind of have to play the minutes as they are and play the most likely outcomes. And when Nick Batum looks like one of the best bets according to Awesemo, with the 35 minutes he played last game, had a potential to get to like 38 to 40 minutes in that one, I think it was an interesting mark. So buy into the minutes here and make this one probably, I would say a 9, maybe even a 10-pointer, no house advantage day to take the over.
And last but not least, we've got a questionable Joel Embiid, 10.5 rebounds, Spags.
So this is one for Embiid. Actually, let me make sure that I'm aligning a little bit here, but I think I would be shading the over. Okay, so it's still shading the over. I would feel a little more strongly than the 64% chance we have for this one. It's not quite as good as the Batum one, because Batum basically getting every stat out there, just banking on the minutes, and a guy like Batum contributes in every category, so that's a thing. Embiid can certainly, for fantasy, have a great day that's mostly points dependent and maybe kept off the boards a little more by Clint Capella, and then you see guys like Simmons and Tobias Harris get there more. But a no house advantage, I think, for this prop, like, it still looks like one of the stronger overs to hit. And I think even if there are some pathways he can lose on it, I still wouldn't mind the rebounds prop. I still wouldn't mind points plus rebounds for Embiid. I just think this one overall for me is probably closer to a 5 or 6 pointer than it is. Whereas the Batum one, I think, is a play you should probably have in every lineup.
Spags, you are way too sharp, my dude. 10.5 rebounds. I have him right now for 13. And here's just, this is the quick logic for it. He's going to play a lot more than the 31 minutes a game that he averaged, 31.1 minutes per game over the course of the regular season. We're seeing those really trend up. Obviously, we had the surprising game 1 where he ended up getting all the way up to 40. And it's just like, what are you even doing in that spot, Doc Rivers? The guy's coming off of knee issues, or maybe he's not as hurt as we think he is, but 35 and 34 the last 2. I think I've got him in for 36.5 minutes here today. That's a big number that allows me to just kind of play all the Joel Embiid over props that I really want to, on points, on rebounds, on just about everything. But rebounds is definitely mathematically the one that looks like it shows out the best in this spot over on NHA. Definitely be taking the over there and play a lot of Joel Embiid in DFS. I'm not telling you anything you shouldn't be doing already.
And as always, friends, don't forget to play on No House Advantage, our sponsor, who is taking a different spin on daily fantasy sports by offering player prop contests across the NBA, MLB, NFL, and PGA for cash prizes. Download the No House Advantage app today and use promo code Awesemo to receive a deposit bonus of up to $20 for new signups. Be your friends, not the house. Win big with player props day. Is someone breathing heavily over there? What's happening?
No. Am I?
Did I make that up? Oh. I don't know. It sounded like someone yawned.
Now it's following you. These sounds are following you.
What is happening today? Also,
you're about to find out what's happening today, Kayla.
Yes, we are. When something you hear something like minutes after it's said, that's what just happened with Spags when he was like, "It's probably a natural gas leak." I was dying inside and I couldn't laugh out loud.
That was advanced humor for you, Kayla, because if you do a callback to a joke, it's really funny after the fact, and that's how jokes work. It's fun.
Nothing funnier than explaining comedy too. That's the true.
Yeah, that's really what we're here for. You're so welcome. This is what I do on the daily. It's fine. Don't mind me.
It's definitely a Monday here. Let me tell you that. All right, let's get into it. It is time for the Pirate Parlay. Are we ready?
Kind of. We're gonna get it. We're gonna get it set. I think we can get him. Oh, it's not gonna go.
Oh.
Go ahead, Kayla.
All right, I'll take it away. Whoopsies. Start all over. Take 2. The parlay pirate and his parrot Parody are here to sing you a soft, sweet melody. What are the picks that will take us to the top? Will they stay high and dry, or will they walk the plank? Was that supposed to rhyme? I don't know.
Okay. I don't know. I think I messed it up. I think you might not have the updated version of the run sheet.
I think you changed the last line.
I changed me lines. And now Jordan Klein would be so obliged. He cut the music. He's the producer of us all, but... And so it'll be... We're not doing a parlay. We're playing one team and one team only. It's yo-ho, a Clipper's life for me. I play them all, I play them now. I will take 5.5. Don't really mind what needs to happen now. I don't know, I screwed that up. Yo-ho, a Clipper's life for me.
Wow.
Oh, I can't breathe. This entire show is like a giant blooper reel.
I'm sorry, me mateys.
I think it's a good pick. I mean, I'm not going to argue that.
Thank you, me matey.
I love when Eric breaks out the guitar. Well done.
Thank you.
I feel like a kid, like with a substitute teacher who comes in and plays guitar basically every time. But it honestly takes me back in a way that I appreciate.
It's like Ed Helms in The Office or something.
Yes.
Just out of place, not actual good singing, but really good singing at the same time because it's that weird.
It's funny. There was a guy earlier in the chat, like when we first started, who like before the show started was like, on the NBA strategy show, they talked about cereal for 20 minutes or whatever. And then people I think were already hinting at like, boy, stay tuned for this show then because you're going to see it get weird. And I don't think that guy, if he is still watching this show, his head might have exploded like that Scanners gif of the dude just like a watermelon explosion. So I hope that guy's watching. I hope he's having a great time and learning that there's joy to be had when doing betting in DFS. It's not all picks.
Absolutely.
It is not all picks. That is a fact. 2-game NBA slate, 13-game MLB slate where we've had, I don't know, Spags basically tell you exactly what you should do on the slate twice now today. Just follow his advice and win money. How about that?
What was the script supposed to say?
Oh, I screwed up my lyric. I clicked on the wrong tab, but I already had the guitar on my lap, and I have a hat that like falls off anytime you move anywhere. So it makes it very difficult to put it all together live without being an idiot. But
the last line was, will they be golden or will they all flop, which does rhyme, but I guess you had a version that had a different. I like that Eric is just doing a creative process here too, where he's doing rounds. He's like, I can improve this a little bit. Like that speaks to my soul as a man who's done monologues with the puppet based on him.
Yes, you do that. See you Wednesday, guys. See you Wednesday. You might get a full show of Puppet Lindquist if I had to guess.
Yes.
Do not throw caution to the wind, baby. Let's go. Ramp it up.
Puppet Lindquist will be making his return. Much anticipated.
Maybe his farewell, even. Who knows?
The farewell tour. Don't miss.
See ya Wednesday, y'all. Just plugging. If you want to see the goodies. I mean, I know Loco's in the chat here. My guy Loco, the news god himself. You absolutely need to be following this dude. If you're not already, you're losing money and you're missing opportunities. So whatever. But I mean, there's nobody who stands up for you, Spags, the way that Loco will for Puppet Lindquist. My God.
He's a fan. He's on, and it's funny because like El Negro Loco or News God is a guy like, he's like a tough dude. Like he is what he is. Like he presents himself. He's just like a street smart dude who's would not be the first person I would think would gravitate towards a puppet of a white boy dressed like that. And yet here we are. And that's the real love too. And I will very much appreciate all the puppet love that we can get out there. Maybe not the adult babies. I think it's better.
Puppets need love too. No discrimination here, squirrel. It's fine.
Adult babies was probably the low point on this show.
You keep your hands off cheeks. Let me study how you ride the beach. Okay.
Okay, before we do move on, quick question. Where did the Irish pirate come from?
Irish, dude, it's Jeffrey Rush's. I'm just doing a Jeffrey Rush impression from the first Pirates of the Caribbean. That's exactly how he sounds. Not to, toot my horn or anything, but he's literally doing an Irish pirate, and I'm doing the Irish pirate voice.
But okay? I'm confused because your pirate voice sounds like most pirates that I've heard.
That's what movies. I thought. But I guess it's a leprechaun now, maybe.
I think you've gotten more piratey as we've gone on, honestly. I think in the beginning it had a little too much Irish to it. And now you've kind of, as any man will do, you've probably tended to your craft. I'm sure Melanie's heard a few too many pirate voices around the house, but yeah, it's working. That's the main thing.
How am I getting married? What in the world? How has somebody spent 5 years with me in my own room playing piano and guitar and singing pirate songs?
God bless her.
Yeah. Honestly, props to her. Yeah, it's fine. Good luck to her. Let's go.
Eric, before the show ends this week, what other voices do you do?
Oh God, I mean, I don't even know how to even like start. There's a number of them we have. I mean, I could probably do just about every Muppet. I used to do Spice Girls really well. I used to do a bit with a bunch of Spice Girls.
Hold on.
The class that smashed. I could do all 5 of the Spice Girls with their intricate voices. I have to go back and listen to it because it's very specific for each one, like sporty.
We're gonna need to hear this.
No, we're not. I should not have thrown that into the world.
Yes, we are.
Yeah. So I used to have a really good Jim Carrey too. It's fine. Don't mind me.
Oh my gosh, I heard that. Yes.
Ace Ventura. It's fine.
Okay, Spice Girls also Wednesday.
Call his Einhorn. It's fine. What?
Yeah, we have to see the Spice Girls before.
No, we don't.
Before the end of the week. Yes, we do.
Okay. That's a LA Friday only. That's a Friday. Buy a ticket to the show.
Eric making us go to karaoke so you can do Spice Girls songs and all the voices.
I was gonna say you're not on the show on Friday.
My karaoke song, it should not shock anybody, but it's "Colors of the Wind." It is definitely it smashes every single time at karaoke.
From Pocahontas?
Pocahontas. It smashes every single time. It is the best. You think you own whatever land you land on. It's fine. We have 5 minutes.
I know. You're the only person I've ever heard with that karaoke song. Mine's Shania Twain.
Ooh, what's Spags? Spags, come on now.
I've historically done Bye 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 to some success.
Yeah, you have.
That's a smash.
That was back in the days where a fella maybe needed to use karaoke like a young Tom Jones to serenade a gal or two. But now it's just whatever. Coolio, I feel like I would enjoy doing Coolio.
Oh yeah.
It's a slippery road. I feel like you can't do cultural appropriation in karaoke. Is that a thing? I don't know.
I mean, my other one is Super Bass by Nicki Minaj.
Super Bass is sick. Also, Nicki Minaj. I've always loved Nicki Minaj. That's a weird thing that I just love her.
Okay, we're going to move on now.
Okay, good talk.
Heading on to Good Dog, Bad Dog. In real life, there is no such thing as a bad dog. In betting and DFS, there are a lot of underdogs who may have no chance in their game. So who is a good dog to target tonight and who's a bad one? Spags, give us your good dog.
My good dog, I think overall, actually, let me just make sure that I got this right because I got to see the Twins line. Okay, so they're not a dog. So my good dog is going to be, I guess, the Atlanta Hawks. And it's not really that I think they have a great probability to win here. They still only have 43.5% implied win percentage based upon their money line, but still a spot for them that I think they can keep it close. And I'm going to be hedging, or not hedging. I will be heavily invested and not hedging at all on the Hawks, I think, because there's really no way that I could do it without being a legal sports bettor. So I'll be just playing all the John Collins, playing all these other Hawks players in the hopes that they have some fight left in them. And that's it for me. And hopefully, honestly, if they win one, even better, but they are a very core part of what I'm doing today. So hopefully they can keep it close.
I don't believe in hot streaks, but I believe in the Toronto Blue Jays lineup being actually pretty freaking good. And Vladimir Guerrero going completely nuts. They're dogs right now to Boston. And I'm not a big believer in hot streaks, but I might have to reconsider that after watching this Toronto team on the road in Boston. I thought that there was going to be some negative regression for them coming out of Florida and playing in other ballparks. But my God, they just hit the ball hard. You're seeing 43% barrel percentage going across up and down that lineup. Vlad Guerrero, absolute MVP, probably the front runner here at this point in time. I didn't look at the odds, but just everything he's doing is as build coming out of AAA. So give me Toronto as the dogs, slight dogs there to Boston. If you want to put that in with my bad dog, or like the good side of my bad dog, that's a lovely little parlay that I'm a big fan of today.
And your bad dog would be?
Oh, Utah. Come on now. Let's not even kid ourselves here. So there's that. And yeah, I'm just going to be on the Clipper side of it. I have to just continue. I'm going down with that ship. No pun intended to the Pirate Parlay. Let's go. It's Clip City time. Lob City.
My bad dog will be the Seattle Mariners, as I talked about here. I'm taking the Twins in every possible way I can, and they are a home dog here. It's not like a big spread in baseball or anything, but still a spot where I just don't think the Mariners are going to have any shot to win this one. I think Kenta Maeda coming back in from injury, so not a great DFS play today, but a guy who I think is due for some positive regression. Just serves the results he had and the fact that he's been injured maybe does lend some credence to some of the bad games he's had all year, but it's a good get well spot for him as a pitcher. It's a good get well spot for the Minnesota offense where they should be able to tee off on Marco. So I think it's a spot really overall that I just don't see any way Seattle can win this game.
And to make or break, which player game currently looks like a make or break spot to you on tonight's slate, Spags?
Well, that's John Collins, of course. I will be watching him stand behind the 3-point line, waving his arms wildly as they treat him like he's an imaginary man and a child. That's like, it's unbelievable. But I think today is the day where if ever you're going to let John Collins shoot a few more threes, he's been so efficient. He's been good. He can stand to rebound a little bit more. There's so many pathways for him to be good. And I'm hoping he finds one of them is really the hope.
It's the Kermit with his arms up meme that works out really well for me. John Collins, I'm going to have 0%. Good luck, Eric. I understand it. Again, I get it. I'm just going to try to fade half the field in that spot. I think he's a great point per dollar play. I'm not going to bash it whatsoever. And it's not like you need upside on a 2-gamer. You just need 36 from him in that spot. But I don't even think 36 is in the bag. So I'm going way, way under.
And for fade of the day, is there one game, player, or team that you anticipate you'll have a lot less interest in than the rest of the public, Eric?
Yeah, so John Collins, I threw out there already. I guess one more. So I'll give the inverse of it. A guy that I'm going to be over the field on. If I need to find a direct pivot, somebody in that same price range, different position. But I think Jordan Clarkson has a big game tonight, even against the Clippers. I think that if the game can blow out, that would be excellent. But Jordan Clarkson's really played very, very poorly here. He's bound to go and have a big offensive game at some point in time over the course of this series. I'm hoping it's directly affecting Donovan Mitchell, if that's going to be happening. I'm still going to have a lot of Donovan Mitchell. I love this late night hammer in this game. I'm going to have a lot of Embiid, trying to pair him with both or at least two of those other studs from the evening game, mostly Paul George, of course. But I'll answer it differently there. But John Collins definitely going to be my fade.
For MLB, it would be Marco Gonzalez, so I'll take that safe one right away. And I'll throw into, for NBA DFS, somebody in the chat, and I just lost who it was, saying that Furkan Korkmaz might be a sneaky play. He won't be sneaky, and I think he's my pick here, where not an outright fade, because it's a 2-game slate. You're going to have to really play a little bit of everybody in the hopes that they can go. But like mixing up your Korkmaz exposure, taking a little bit of Tybalt, taking a little bit of Shake Milton, I think is the way to approach that one, where there's a lot of minutes security. And I think that's something that I've been really mindful of on some slates. And yesterday with Bruce Brown, didn't quite get there with as mindful as I should have been. But I think with these players who have like a really fungible role where somebody else can come in and easily take their minutes, those are the guys who just have to try to play multiple outcomes. And especially on a short slate, that's sometimes the only way to get different. So play some Korkmaz, but to me, he's a fade here in terms of just really make sure to watch the ownership and come in a little bit above, a little bit under that, and then spread it around to some of the other guys who can take those minutes away from him.
Love it when we fit Korkmaz into the show.
One of your faves.
One of my faves.
Is he really?
There was one day where I had Spags say his name 5 times fast, and he did it, and it was incredible.
I think you would find him handsome too. Like he's a good looking guy. Doesn't get the rep. Like he's not, we're not all here fantasizing over Furkan Korkmaz, but he gets the job done in the looks department.
Why fantasize over Furkan Korkmaz when you have an Eric Lindquist in your presence? What can I say?
Or John Collins, I'd say.
Wow.
He's the one I'm fantasizing.
I got the look of death from Jordan Klein. Like, get the hell out of here. Get off this. Just get off the screen.
Well, yeah, this has been something. Thank you both. Spags, Eric, thanks. We needed this today. It's a good uplifting show. Lots of laughs. My face hurts. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to NBA Deeper Dive and Live Before Locker coming your way next on the same stream. Thank you all for tuning in. We'll be back with you tomorrow here on the Tip-Off. I'm Kayla Knierim, and don't miss Wednesday, where we will have Puppet Lindquist and The Spice Girls by Eric Lindquist.
No, we will not.
What I want.
Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Awesemo.com NBA Deeper Dive presented by OddsShopper. I'm Dave Loughran. On the Twitters at Lafy_D. Hit me up at LOUGHY_D. And while you're over there, say hello to my friend Adam Scherer at ShipMyMoney DFS. Finally got the AC back in the apartment today. It must feel nice.
Yeah, it feels great. Really nice start to the weekend. I had a good weekend DFS-wise. Now I got AC back. Pretty happy for a Monday.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And we got two games to touch on: Philly, Atlanta, Utah, and the LA Clippers. Before we dive into that, though, the first question is, what do you make now of the NBA playoffs with Kyrie Irving going down yesterday? He's already been ruled out for Game 5. James Harden's been ruled out for Game 5, and Steve Nash said he still has a gap to make up in terms of his recovery efforts. Irving, that landed on Giannis, did not look good at all. He left the stadium in a walking boot and crutches. Like, everything just flipped over upside down after yesterday's game.
Yeah, I wasn't watching the game, so I didn't see the injury, but obviously already saw that he's out, Harden's out. Just completely changes that series. And on top of that, of course, when you lose Kyrie Irving, it's going to make the Bucks look better anyway. But the Bucks, from some of the stuff I saw, played better too. Like, you got way more potential assists from Giannis and Middleton in that game than you had gotten in the first couple of games where they were just playing pure ISO ball. So I think it's a tough spot for the Nets now. I still think that Durant is good enough that he can carry that team potentially, but now the Bucks have more talent for as long as Irving and Harden are out. As good as Durant is, the supporting cast on the Nets is not Chris Middleton and Jrue Holiday. So it just completely changes that series.
I'd be shocked if Irving comes back this series, honestly.
Yeah, like I said, I didn't see it, but obviously it doesn't sound good when you're ruled out a full day ahead of time. And normally when you leave a game early, you're questionable the next day, unless it's something that's going to keep you out for a while.
Now, did you see the Nikola Jokic ejection?
I didn't see it live. I went back and saw it on Twitter, and that was absurd.
So what do you think?
I think that it was very good for me financially, but it was an absolutely terrible call. I mean, he barely touched Cameron Payne. Like, for one, Cameron Payne should get suspended just for laying on the ground for 3 minutes for no reason.
Not a drop of blood.
Yeah, he grazed his face. He got more ball than he did Cameron Payne. So, like, I think that to eject, on one hand, I hate the, you can't call it on this player type thing.
In this game, right, because then you're just not doing your job.
Right, but I think to eject anybody in a playoff game, it needs to be pretty bad. And to eject someone like Jokic, it probably needs to be egregious. That was almost not a foul. He almost did not even touch Payne. I really have no idea how he got ejected.
You know what they're saying? I think a lot of it was that wind up.
Yeah, it was the wind up, but it's not a foul to wind up. It's a flagrant one if you wind up and make contact with the guy, which he did. But it's not like he wound up and clotheslined them or something. He wound up and smacked the ball out of his hand. You've
seen a lot worse flagrant twos than that. I would argue that I've seen worse flagrant ones than that.
I was going to say I've seen much worse flagrant ones than that.
Yeah. Now, granted, there was one angle where it looks like he gets him pretty decent, but if you've ever been cracked in the nose, you know that if you get a good shot to the nose, you're probably going to start bleeding. And, it can't, especially a man the size of Nikola Jokic coming down on you like that with as much force as he did, you would really think the campaign would have been in agonizing pain. Or at least bleeding. If Jokic
if you look
really
at Cameron Payne on the floor, you could argue he was in agonizing pain.
I don't think I could argue that, actually. You got to do what you got to do. I don't see the truth is I don't blame Cameron Payne for what he did because you're trying to get the best player out. But can we agree that even if Jokic wasn't ejected from that game and they stole one of them to make the series 3-1, they still have no chance. They still would have had no chance whatsoever to win the series.
Yeah, they weren't coming back in the series. I think if you told me that play could only be a flagrant 2 or a common foul, I think it's a common foul.
Really?
If those are the only two choices, if we're just pretending flagrant 1 doesn't exist, then yes.
All right. Yeah, you're saying it's closer to one side than it is to a flagrant 2. Yeah, I get exactly. it. I was very shocked by it. And I was also shocked by a lot of people, self-righteously claiming that, oh, these people on Twitter acting like this is a bullshit ejection. You complain about this and that, but then once this happens, you're saying it can't happen and you want consistency. I want consistency too, right? And to be clear, I said a couple things on Twitter, but I didn't really express one direction or the other yesterday. Just wasn't in the mood. But I want consistency too. But I also want at least some measure of reason, like some nuance to this. Like if you're looking at that as a flagrant 2 because of the windup, even though he got 95% ball, then that's a concern as well. Like if you wind up to punch somebody, but you never throw it, are you gone?
Right. Yeah. Like it's just weird. Like I understand that goes into like a flagrant 1, but I still just have no idea how they landed on flagrant 2 there.
Would you eject somebody if they wound up to punch somebody and held back at the last second?
And that was like the extent of the altercation?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Especially not if it's Nikola Jokic in the playoffs.
Do you think if Jokic ended up scrapping with Booker, they were real close?
Yeah. If that had turned into a fight, then sure.
Of course. Oh yeah, of course. No. But do you think Jokic would have won that fight?
I would hope so.
A lot of people in chat this morning on the strategy show, like, man, Jokic is soft. Booker would have taken him out. That's a pretty.
Jokic isn't from like the nicest part of the world either. I have a feeling he's been in a few scraps.
It's so funny you say that because someone's like, Booker's from Michigan. He knows how to fight. And Josh is like, Jokic is from Serbia.
Yeah, you know? I saw a picture on Twitter. Like, apparently he's got brothers like older and even bigger than him that he grew up with on like a farm in Serbia. I have a feeling he's been in a couple of fights.
Yeah, I would think so as well. You ready to dive into this? All right, let's do it.
I said yeah if you didn't hear me.
Oh no, I definitely didn't hear you.
Okay.
Hit that thumbs up too. If you're coming over from the tip-off show, or maybe you're just coming in early for Live Before Lock, or you just jumped in so you could watch Adam and myself in the deeper dive, hammer that thumbs up. At least get us to 200. 43 away from the 200 mark. That would be a good right out of the gate, and then we'll move from there. Subscribe to the channel too, so you always know when all of our content's dropping. We're trying to make that push to 60K once we get to NFL season. Keep putting out great free content for all of you. And if you want to join, you want to become a member here on the YouTubes, hit that join button down below. Sure to hit you with a shout out. You get the emojis, you get the badges, and some other stuff along the way. So let's do it. We'll make it happen right now. The Philadelphia 76ers on the road, hosted by the Atlanta Hawks. Sixers 3-point favorites, 225 total. Game 3 was kind of a pivotal one. I looked at that thinking the Sixers would win, didn't know by how much or what it would look like, but they ended up just taking complete control of that game, Adam. So let's just general overview here since it's the playoffs and we're always talking about these games. It's important that we recap what we saw in the previous ones to set a good barometer for what we think happens in Game 4. Sixers were the dominant team in Game 2 and 3. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, and I mean, they're clearly the better team here. I think that they should come out and take care of business again. You know, losing Danny Green isn't helpful, of course, but I don't think it's likely in this particular matchup to be that big of a deal. We had already seen that he, no longer was drawing the Trae Young assignment, so it's not like they need to change anything on that front. Maybe opens things up a little bit more for Bogdanovich, but yeah, I mean, I still think Philly, should be favored here, and this is obviously assuming Embiid plays. Questionable once again, but no real reason to think he's not going to play.
He's playing.
Yeah, it would be nuts if he didn't. So, yeah, I think that even with Green out, this is still a spot where I expect the Sixers to have a solid game.
What's up, Albert? Welcome to Team Awesemo, brother. Nice to have you here. We'll start it with Joel Embiid then. He's $10,500 on DraftKings. On Fanduel, Joel Embiid is weighing in at, where is he? 11-2, sorry. It's so hard to not like what he's doing. And I have one prop that I like quite a bit. It's going to be one that you probably want to parlay with another big favorite somewhere. Over 2.5 assists for Joel Embiid. I think it's juiced pretty heavy to the over for obvious reasons, but it's been pretty tough to stop him. And the reason I like this is because what they did last game, they're going to probably do and keep doing, trying to double Embiid. But this is a guy who even a year ago, 2 years ago, couldn't pass out of double teams without turning the ball over. He looks way different when getting doubled, and he's finding open guys. And that resulted in, sure, 27 points, which was the lowest total by 12 of this series, Adam, but also 8 assists last game. He's also racked up a ton of stocks. He's rebounding well. He's adding counting stats pretty much everywhere, and he's proving that if they try and lock him down and force bad shots, he will find the open shooter.
Yeah, and on top of that, he's playing big minutes. For the series, he's averaged 35.3 minutes per game. That's including, losing a minute or so last game to garbage time. You haven't had the most competitive games in a couple of these. So, I think Embiid, in my opinion, is the top pay-up guy on the slate if you can find the money for him. Through the first 3 games against Atlanta, he's averaged 1.76 DraftKings points per minute, has a 36.7% usage rate, 20% assist percentage, averaging a little over 10 rebounds per game as well. And as you were saying, last game, they changed things up a little bit. You saw Embiid's usage come down some, but it came down to 29.3%. It's not like they kept him from shooting.
Right.
They just kept him from shooting quite as much. He still had 14 field goal attempts and then 16 free throws on top of it. He's gotten to the line, or he has 15, 16, and 16 free throw attempts in the 3 games in this series.
And he's a good free throw shooter who's actually not shooting that well from the free throw. Well, not as well in this series, even this one.
Yeah, and that's a change from what we saw in the Washington series. The Washington series, he had double-digit free throw attempts once the entire series. Yeah. So doing a much better job getting to the line here against Atlanta. And then, like you said, the assist numbers up last game as well, which was really good to see. So I still think that the added playing time that you're getting in the postseason from Embiid, in addition to just what he's been able to do in this matchup, makes him I think the highest projected guy on the slate.
Okay, yeah, it's hard to disagree with that. How does he fit into lineups today? Outside of just being the highest projected, does he fit nicely in the lineups? Is there enough value here on DraftKings where he's 10-5, Fanduel at 11-2?
I think there will be. I haven't really built lineups yet, but I know just from writing the deep dive earlier, there's guys that they might not be the most exciting guys to roster, but there's enough cheap guys, whether you're talking about the front court from the Clippers with Morris and Batum, whether you're talking about the backcourt / wings from the Sixers with either Korkmaz, Shake Milton, both. There's enough cheap guys here that I don't think it's going to be that difficult to get to Embiid.
I don't think so either. I guess it'll depend on who you're pairing him with, because there are clearly a lot of solid high-end players, maybe not super high-end players. I mean, clearly Joel Embiid's up top. It's strange to me, Kawhi Leonard's price point, and we'll talk about that. Even on DraftKings, FanDuel is absurd, but even on DraftKings where he's priced at. Aside from that, though, these guys won't be that difficult to get to. But sticking with the Sixers, Ben Simmons, look, he's been fine, okay? He's been Ben Simmons in large part. He had one, brutal game as a scorer, and then game 1 against Washington, only those 6 points. But aside from that, he's doing pretty much what you would expect from him as a scorer. He has the triple-double upside, although rebounds have been down considerably in this series. Curious to get your thoughts on the huge drop-off in rebounding for Ben Simmons from one series to the next, and really from the regular season to this series as well.
Yeah, I think pretty surprising that the rebounding is down. The usage rate at least bounced back last game, which was good to see, because that I think was a legitimate concern too, because in game 2 of the series, when Simmons switched to being the primary defender on Young, he happened to have an 8% usage rate in that game. And so it was just like, all right, is he just like going to completely forego playing offense and put all of his energy into the defensive end? We did see him bounce back to a 23% usage rate last game, which is, higher than normal for him. So that was good to see. At least the rebounding numbers definitely still concerning. And I do think you should factor it in. You don't want to just assume that for every game in the series, he's going to continue being basically a non-factor on the boards. But you have gotten 3 games, where you're just playing all your minutes against the same team in back-to-back games. When you've gotten 4, 3, and 4 rebounds for someone that typically does rebound like Simmons does, I do think it's a legitimate thing that you should factor in when you're trying to project him.
Yeah, I think it is too. What would you say the main reason for it is?
I don't know.
Me neither. Have you mentioned, I don't know if you did, I was answering someone in chat here, so my apologies. Had you mentioned rebound chances in this series?
No, I haven't. I can pull it up now.
I'm just curious to see if it's down significantly from where it was pretty much in the regular season and in this series, because it just seems very odd for somebody like Ben Simmons to see such a drop off here.
All right. So in the 3 games in this series, He is averaging 6.7 rebound chances. It's
got to be way lower.
Yeah, so it's 6.9 rebound chances per 36 minutes in this series. In the regular season,
10.4.
Yeah, 10.4 and 32.4 minutes per game. So 11.6. Like he's getting like a little over half the rebound chances he was getting during the regular season in this series.
It's also entirely possible that we just assume that number comes back up because there's no real reason to assume he can't start getting more boards.
Right, and that's kind of what that's kind of how I approach it when I do stuff for the postseason. Is once you've gotten a few games of the same series, I do factor those numbers in, along with the rates that we've seen all season long. But I'm also not just going to assume that Ben Simmons doesn't rebound this entire series.
Right.
I think I guess the broader point is that from a DFS standpoint, it just is kind of it just makes Ben Simmons even more Ben Simmons like at 7,600, he has the potential to go get you 50 DraftKings points because he can go out there and triple double. But the offense is going to come and go. The rebounding apparently is going to come and go, or at least go, may or may not come back. The assists will be there, but it's just sort of, especially on DraftKings, like FanDuel, he's even more expensive and you don't get the bonuses. So it's even harder to like him there. But on DraftKings, it's just a price point where if he plays the way that he has so far this series on average, you're not going to really be happy that you rostered him even at 7,600. But the type of upside he has, he can go get you 50 fantasy points at that salary.
Jeremiah Johnson in our premium Slack chat says, Lafayette, imagine Simmons guarding Trey a little more since game one. He's not near the basket as much for those rebounding opportunities. He's guarded a lot of like ball dominant guards though throughout the season and still rebounded well. That's
something I would expect to play into it some, but like he only had four rebounds in game one also.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. It's tough, but I think you could be right, Jeremiah. I also think though 3 or 4 rebounds should not be the expectation either. That's one easy way to put it. What about Tobias Harris sandwiched in between Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons on DraftKings?
I think it's just it's a decent price point. I don't think there's a ton of upside at that salary, but I don't think he's really overpriced either. He's averaging 37 minutes per game in this series. His production's been in line with his regular season numbers pretty much. During the regular season, he averaged 1.05 DraftKings points per minute in the games that Simmons and Embiid played. So far in this series, he's at 1.09. So you're getting similar production. You're getting a bunch of minutes from him. If you get to him, like power forward's not a very strong position. So, and on DraftKings, you can use him at small forward as well. So if you get to Tobias Harris, I think it's a fine play. I don't think he's going to be one of the first guys into my lineup though, because when you think about how you're building your lineup, like I would rather be getting to Embiid, a couple of Embiid, Young, Mitchell, George, Kawhi, those guys are like a little bit more expensive than Harris. And then you have guys that you can pay down for, whether, again, it's guys from the Clippers, guys from the Sixers, whatever. So I think it's kind of an awkward price point when you start comparing it to how you're going to actually build your lineups out.
Simmons has a 7.5 point rebound prop today. Or 7.5 rebound prop today. Under's juiced a bit, but yeah, that goes to show you what the expectations are.
For what it's worth, also, his average rebound distance is about the same in this series as it was during the regular season.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that was kind of – I didn't really even look at that because his potential rebounds are down so much that I'm less worried about the distance and more worried about the fact that he's just not getting any.
Yeah, I looked just because, if during the regular season it was like 7.5 the average rebound this was like 7.5. I looked just to see if on the rebounds he's grabbing, if it happened to be like 11 feet or something, it'll be like, okay, well,
right. And he's just lucking in the 3 or 4 of them a game at this point. Yeah,
right. That's a good point. Yeah. So it's like, I don't think that the factor of the same makes me think necessarily that they bounce back, but it at least doesn't tell me that he's just standing at the 3-point line the whole time. And
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a good point. All right, let's talk about the absence of Danny Green here. Unless you want to hit on Seth Curry first.
There's not a ton to say about Curry. I don't think he's definitely one of those guys where you can use him as like a last piece into a lineup. He's very reasonably priced. I think there's a chance he gets a couple of more minutes with Danny Green out as well. So far in this series, you've seen 36, 29, and 32 minutes from him, last game being the 32. I think, again, you can probably count on, assuming a competitive game, 32, 33, 34, somewhere in there. He's around a 0.8 fantasy point per minute guy. So at his salary, it's a decent projection, but not obviously not someone that you're, putting into your lineup right off the bat.
Furkan Korkmaz started the second half for the injured Danny Green last game, who only played about 4 minutes in the first quarter, did not return. Korkmaz got in the first half, it was actually Thibault that replaced him, but Korkmaz played 11 minutes and then started the second half, ended up playing almost 28 minutes in that game. The large majority of his production came in the first quarter where he had 11 points. And he finished with 14 points, no boards, and 1 assist, a couple of swipes. Fergan Korkmaz is really cheap here, but you're relying solely on scoring from him. And this is one of the most hot and cold shooters out there. So one, do you anticipate that he gets the start today? It's always tough for me to predict that he will just because somebody started the second half, especially given the coach has a little bit of time to make some adjustments. But do you think he starts, and what type of value, what type of ownership should we be looking at on someone like Korkmaz?
My assumption is that he starts, but I agree there's a lot of different ways you can go. You can go Thibault, you can go Milton, you can go other people. So yeah, I mean, it's the Sixers just have so many guys that like they could use because they have multiple guys that can play different positions. So like, I mean, Harris can play the 3, Simmons can play any position. There's so many different ways the Sixers can go. But my assumption for now is Korkmaz, just because he did start the second half of that game. He also finished the game with a team leading plus 24. So I'm just, until we hear otherwise, I'm assuming it's Korkmaz. If it is Korkmaz, you're going to get a lot of ownership there, especially on DraftKings. He's only 3,500, 4,700 on Fanduel, I think is a lot more appropriate, if not overpriced. But 3,500 on DraftKings, you're going to get a lot of ownership there, which is fine. I think that if he is starting, he's someone you should be rostering in cash games because there's no real reason not to. And he's certainly a fine playing tournaments as well. But I would say that, if he starts and if he does get a lot of ownership, that is certainly a spot that you can just make some pivots, especially if you're playing multiple tournament lineups, because kind of like we were just saying, there's so many different ways this can go. And if Korkmaz isn't shooting well and someone is playing well off the bench, Doc Rivers isn't going to be afraid to give them more minutes, whether that's Shake Milton, whether it's Tyrese Maxey, who only played like 5 minutes last game, whether, George Hill gets hot, Matisse Thybulle does things offensively, whatever it is. There's a lot of guys that can take those minutes away from Korkmaz if he's not knocking down shots.
Yeah, that's kind of the issue, right? Because we've seen so many rotations this season in the postseason, not from the Sixers. Well, we've seen plenty of rotations and lineups for them as well, but plenty of teams that outside of garbage time really run a thin and condensed rotation. Doc Rivers is running, he ran 6 guys off the bench last game. And that's not including Isaiah Joe getting that blowout run in the final 30 seconds or whatever it was. So, there's definitely, and I guess you could point out the fact that Danny Green left early. So sure. But Doc Rivers is not tied or married to any one player. And I think that presents a ton of opportunity, just to build off of what you were saying, presents a huge opportunity here to say, all right, if Korkmaz does end up being the chalkiest value option and all of these other guys are going vastly overlooked, might be a good opportunity, especially for a guy like Shake Milton that can get hot, or even Maxey, if he were to come out and get the minutes and get hot, to at least consider them in some percent of your lineups. Yeah,
it's just whoever starts, especially if it's Korkmaz. So Korkmaz started 11 games during the regular season, averaged 0.84 DraftKings points per minute. Only in 2 of those games were all 3 of the main guys active, Simmons, Embiid, and Harris.
I was going to ask, how many did he start for a Seth Curry or Danny Green? Exactly.
He did average a fantasy point per minute in those 2 games, though. But, the point is, like, he's not going to be the number 1 scorer or number 2 or number 3 scoring option here. And he's a streaky scorer as well. At 3,500, he's like, if he starts, he's like the safest of the Sixers guys, but that gap just really isn't that big, because if Shake Milton plays well off the bench, he's going to play more. You didn't really have Maxey in the rotation last game. I've seen people bring him up in chat. I based on last game, you can't really expect Maxey to really get a lot of minutes here, but it's not like we haven't seen already in the postseason where Maxey goes from not being in the rotation to Maxey goes to playing like 18, 20 minutes and having a really, really good game. So it's still someone where, if you're playing huge field tournaments, you can look to. The point just being, at Matisse Thybulle, there's a decent chance, I think, that Thybulle starts, just because we've seen that more often than we've seen Korkmaz starting recently. But, even that, like, if the Sixers have a lead down the stretch, they're going to prefer most likely going to Thybulle over Korkmaz, for example. So there's just so many different ways Korkmaz loses minutes that, while I think he's the safest option out of these guys on the Sixers if he starts, there's still a pretty low floor. The ceiling or the average projection really isn't that high in terms of raw points. It's good in terms of points per dollar. If you just roll the dice on other cheap guys in the larger field tournaments, there's a pretty low chance that you really get burned by not having Korkmaz.
I'm with you. Hey, by the way, I was listening to sports radio the other day, and somebody came on just to say that Shake is a dumb name. I think it's a great name, personally.
I think it's a great name for a basketball player.
I wouldn't mind being called Shake.
That's not going to be a thing that we start doing.
Yeah, I've always said there's nothing worse than someone giving themselves a nickname, right? There's nothing, very few things in this world are worse, like, you know, ISIS in North Korea. But aside from that, very few things are worse than giving yourself.
Well, we saw your thoughts on North Korea recently, so.
I said, I'm not getting into that. I don't even think that's controversial, actually. But you think about it, I'll never forget Scooter Jeanette. I was like, I wonder how he got the nickname Scooter. And I remember reading, it was like he's 5 years old at the grocery store with his mom or something and said, call me Scooter. And he got the name Scooter. I mean, that's just bad.
I mean, if you're 5 and it sticks, that's fine.
Yeah, I disagree. I blame the parents, really, for allowing it to stick.
Right, it's not his fault. Yeah.
I remember Hassan Whiteside wanted to be called Agent Block.
I kind of remember that.
Shocked that that didn't stick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you already had Agent Zero, so.
Yeah, but Agent Block, I mean, come on. Shake got the nickname while in utero by his father. And apparently on Basketball Reference, his nickname is also Protein Shake. So I don't know. His real name is Malik Benjamin Milton, but I like Shake. Call me Shake if you want. All right, Adam, let's keep going here with Philadelphia. Anything outside of everyone we've already talked about that's worthy of conversation?
No, I mean, I think that pretty much covers it. Like, just understand that there's a lot of volatility. Like, there's just, you know, seeing YouTube chat right now, like, there's so many people that are like, it's Thibault, it's Milton, it's Korkmaz, whatever. It's whoever happens to be making shots. And you don't really know what the answer to that is. And if the Sixers are up, then it's probably Thibault for defense. So it's really just nobody knows. And you have to understand that whoever starts has the first crack at it, but is fairly likely to not be the guy that closes. So, like, just in cash games and stuff where you already, in tournaments where you already have contrarian pieces, just take, you know, the safest option. But in tournaments, don't be afraid to mix and match these guys, because you're going to see way more ownership going to whoever starts than who's coming off the bench, even though the range of outcomes really isn't very different.
On the Hawks side, and someone asked, how did DeMarcus Cousins get the nickname? I think a coach said that he's got a lot of boogie in him or something when he's on the floor, and he got the name. You can fact check me on that one, but I believe that's the case. The Atlanta Hawks, Adam, coming into this one down 2-1 after taking game one against the Sixers, having a 26-point lead at one point, almost squandering it. They have looked out match, but this is game 4 in Atlanta. I wouldn't be surprised it stays close. Philly only a field goal favorite on the road. Trae Young, though, his first game, he just lit it up. Second game, third game, not so much, although he shot better in game 3. One thing I mentioned to Josh today, though, was he shot better, but he also attempted a lot less shots. And I think it's because it's either take the only good shots you get, which he had, you know, he shot 9 for 17, or start jacking up bad shots against good defense. So I think Trae still has the ability to go off tonight, as he always does, because he's lethal. And when he gets hot, it's very hard to stop him no matter how many hands are in his face. But I do think the Sixers have found a way to slow him in this Atlanta offense down. With only 2 games, how much does that even matter, though?
Right. So you kind of just have to think in levels here. Like, Trae Young still is very capable of going out and giving you a very good game. He's just such a big part of the offense. Even these last couple of games, he's taken 16, 17 shots. He's gotten 9 and 8 free throw attempts. So he's getting shots up, and he's averaging like 18.8 potential assists per 36 minutes. So he's still getting tons of opportunities here. But at the same time, these last 2 games, he has usage rates of 28 and 28.5%. Those are his lowest 2 usage rates all postseason long by a couple of points. So you have to also consider that the changes the Sixers made have done a decent job of, you know, not entirely getting the ball out of his hands, because that's just impossible to do. But he is going to shoot less, most likely tonight, than he was prior to the switch in the Sixers defensive assignment. So you do need to factor that in to some extent, but he's still pretty cheap, and he's playing 37, 38 minutes. I think that, you know, when you compare him to someone like Donovan Mitchell, Paul George, especially Donovan Mitchell, at similar price points, I think those guys come out a little bit ahead, but the range of outcomes is still pretty similar. And so it's a spot where in tournaments, if you are getting a lot more ownership from Mitchell, I think Young is a perfectly fine pivot. If you're getting the same ownership, though, I would go to someone like Mitchell.
All right. I think I would too. I would anticipate another big game from Mitchell today. We'll get there after this one. We'll cruise through Atlanta first. Clint Capella has been kind of an afterthought to some extent from a DFS standpoint. His ownership suggests, I don't want to say the same thing, but he hasn't really had any real popularity in any of these games. Even on Fanduel, he's like 27% right now, Adam. Actually, let me get an update here to see how much we've changed. If you haven't pulled up, you can obviously tell me. But yeah, below 25%, it's 7,300 on a site where you have to play a captain and there's no multi-position eligibility. Even at that price point, you would have hammered Clint Capella at 7,300 earlier in the year,
Yeah, and so I think that, and this goes actually for both parts of the Atlanta front court with John Collins as well. It's a little bit different with these guys than it is. We've talked about, a lot of other guys, Chris Middleton, Michael Porter, throughout the playoffs, where they are producing at a really low rate, but it's because they're shooting really poorly and all their rates are the same. It's a little bit different when you talk about Capella and Collins because both of their per minute production has dropped off. Capella was averaging 1.34 DraftKings points per minute in the regular season. He's at about 0.97 DraftKings points per minute in the postseason, but his usage rate has dropped from about 20% down to like 13% in the postseason. His rebounding percentage has dropped from 26% to 22%. So the decrease in production is actually backed up by him getting fewer opportunities as well, which makes it a little bit more concerning. It's not to say that you can't have Clint Capella just show up and have a monster game. He's certainly capable of it. And the salary is starting to reflect the decrease in productivity, but you do need to view him a little bit differently just based on how the postseason has gone. I do think it's worth noting that in the Sixers series, Capella has a 15.5% usage rate, 24% rebounding percentage. So while it's not as high as it was during the regular season, it is higher than it was during the Knicks series. But on the other hand, his playing times come down because he's had to deal with Joel Embiid. You have that, a greater risk of foul trouble and all of that. So he's only averaging about 29.5 minutes per game. I think he's a risky play, but the salary has come down enough to where he's worth taking some shots on, especially like on DraftKings, it's a little bit tougher because he's basically the same price tag as Rudy Gobert. But on FanDuel, he's $1,400 less expensive than Gobert. And at center, you basically have Embiid, Gobert, Capella. So he's in this price range basically by himself. So I think he's fine in tournaments. I don't think he's someone I end up relying on in cash games. I think I'll just find other options that I feel a little bit better about.
I meant to look this up earlier and I forgot. I wanted to see how many of his points in this series are just on alley-oops. It feels like and you can do that on NBA.com, but I feel like every one of his baskets that I've seen and I've watched every game, it feels like every one of them's on an alley-oop.
Did you look?
What?
Did you check
No,
it?
that's what I said. I forgot to look, but it feels that way, doesn't it? If you've watched these games, and I know that's a lot of what he does anyway, but yeah, I can pull it up while you're talking on the next one. But Jordan, is our own Eric Lindquist just in chat banning some of our most loyal viewers?
He's banning some of our viewers. I had to unban him before.
Hide Eric at this point.
Right? I don't even know if I can do that. We might have to give it a shot here.
See if it works, even though he's got the wrench. That'd be pretty funny. We can always bring him back.
Let me give it a chance here.
I mean, come on, man. He's trying to sabotage the Deeper Dive. I bet he's coming up next on Live Before Lock just to shit on us, huh? No, it's Josh and Greg. Live Before Lock right after this, 6:30 all the way up to 7:30 lock. Be sure to stick around for that one. Do you think Bogdanović here, just given the insane amount of playing time he's been getting, because he's getting a ton of run. If this game's close, you're getting 40 plus minutes again from him, I would assume. Is Bogdanović worth the price point today, given that he's playing huge minutes lately?
Yeah, I think so, because he's someone that, for one, he is playing huge minutes, like you said. He played about 39 minutes last game, played about 41 minutes the game before that. He was already playing big minutes, but he's picked up a couple extra minutes with DeAndre Hunter being out as well. He hasn't been very productive in this series, only 0.78 DraftKings points per minute, but his three-point percentage in this series is 4 or 5 points lower than it was during the regular season. In the postseason, it's overall it's 8 points lower than it was during the regular season. So he's someone that you're just seeing not make shots, but he's going to get those opportunities. He still has a usage rate around 20 to 21% that is in line with what he was doing during the regular season. And if the Sixers do succeed in getting the ball out of Trae Young's hands more, that does bode well for Bogdanovic as well, because for one, he can create, and for two, he leads this team in catch and shoot attempts. So he can kind of get it done in two ways, and you're not paying a premium at all at 6,400 on DraftKings, 6,700 on FanDuel. There's, to me, outside of obviously ownership considerations in tournaments, but outside of that, there's no real reason not to like Bogdanovic at this price point, knowing how many minutes he's playing.
For sure. And I mean, he's clearly getting a lot of ownership, but for good reason. Those minutes are to be cherished for sure. Jordan just timed Eric out for 300 seconds. We love you, Eric. I didn't really think Jordan would do it. APK says sensitive today. No, not sensitive. Just, I don't know. Maybe I'm sensitive. John Collins. How about John Collins today? Is this a spot that sub 6K is worth getting to?
Yeah, it's kind of like rinse and repeat everything I just said about Clint Capella, except for the power forward position and the pricing on Collins is even a little bit more favorable than it is for Capella, because like at center, again, especially DraftKings, if you're in that price range at center, you're going to just play Gobert if you're just thinking, who's the highest projected guy. Whereas saving that money to get down to Collins makes some sense at 5,900. He hasn't been very good in the postseason either. He's averaging a little less, or he's averaging like 0.87 DraftKings points per minute in this series. His usage rate is down from about 22% to about 16.5% in the postseason. His rebounding percentage is down a couple of points. So just like Capella, you're seeing the shot volume come down. You're seeing the rebounding rates come down. This isn't the same thing like we were just saying about Bogdanovic, where his rates are pretty much the same. He's just missing a bunch of shots. Collins isn't getting as many shots, but at the same time, he's also playing more minutes. He's averaged just shy of 34 minutes per game in the 3 games in this series. During the regular season, he only averaged about 30 to 31 minutes per game. So you're getting extra playing time that sort of mitigates the decrease in production. And on top of that, his salary is dropping. So I think that he looks good. You can certainly, he's right now projected to be the 5th highest owned guy on DraftKings. You can certainly make a case for just going elsewhere and not having a 36% owned guy that averages, 0.85 or 0.87 DraftKings points per minute so far. That's certainly an argument you can make. But if we're just talking, good plays and chances of success at their salary, I think that Collins' salary has decreased enough to where I'm relatively comfortable going there, even with the struggles that he's had.
If you haven't been banned by Eric yet, we're 29 likes away from 300. Hit that thumbs up if you're enjoying the show. Much appreciated. 29 likes to 300. Let's make that happen. And subscribe to the channel, too. Close out the Atlanta Hawks for me, Adam, including Danilo Gallinari, who's also pretty popular today, which is funny because he's getting a lot of love. Meanwhile, Kevin Huerter getting absolutely nothing coming off that bad game.
Yeah, I mentioned it in the deep dive today. I hope this is the only time I ever say that Kevin Huerter is one of the best tournament plays on a slate, but we've seen this all postseason long, and I fully expect to see it again tonight. You have these situations where guys like Huerter and Gallinari, at least from like a DFS standpoint, are in a similar role. Like they're out there just, to knock down some shots.
They're chucking.
Right. They're not going to pick up a lot of peripherals. Whichever one shoots well is probably going to play more minutes and obviously score more fantasy points. And it's like everyone's opinion just sways from game to game. When you first came into this series, Danilo Gallinari was like 65% owned the first slate of this series. Huerter was popular, but not as popular. Huerter played like 30 minutes, had a big game. Gallinari played absolutely awful, played 18 minutes. The next time out, Huerter's like massively popular. Gallinari's like 10% owned, if that, on a 2-game slate or 3-game slate, whatever it was. Gallinari does basically what we expected him to do in game 1. And then going into game 3, Gallinari's getting a bunch of ownership. Huerter plays really bad, played 23 minutes, had 5 fantasy points, dealt with some foul trouble, and then also just clearly wasn't playing well. So now you're just going to have people say, oh, Gallinari's the better play, which, I don't think that's a crazy take, but I also don't think he should be twice as popular as Huerter. Like if you're good into this price range, Gallinari probably beats Huerter like what, 55% or like 55% of the time, maybe even less than that. Like it's basically a coin flip between these guys. Their playing time is going to be volatile based on how they're playing. Their scoring is going to depend on how they're shooting. They're not going to give you a lot in the way of peripherals. There's not a really big difference between these two guys. You should not be getting this massive ownership difference between them.
No, I think Gallinari is the better play, but at that, like if they were the same ownership, I'd go with Gallinari. But the ownership discrepancy is significant right now. So in tournaments, I had someone ask me the question earlier in chat, and I said Galler's the better play, but I can't remember if he asked tournament or not. If you're talking about a tournament and you're trying to get different here, it is one spot. Now, I think since the last update, the gap has closed a little bit, but on DraftKings, you're still talking around 30% to 16%. So
right. Yeah. And like, so basically if I end up, I haven't built a cash lineup yet, but if I end up with one of them in cash, my assumption is it'll be Gallinari. But in tournaments, and this isn't to say you shouldn't have any Gallo in tournaments, but like, for example, what normally happens for me, if I were to 150 max, what would probably happen is ownership projections are basically telling you that you're probably going to end up with like a combined, 45% or so exposure to those two, just based on how lineups shake out. It's very reasonable to play like 30% Herder and 16% Gallinari and just flip those.
All right. Brandon Kegel, welcome to Team Awesemo, brother. Nice to see that pop up. Got another member sitting in here, joining the team over on the Awesemo YouTubes. You ready to close this one out with, when I say close this one out, we still got 20 minutes, but Utah and the Clippers?
Yeah.
All right. If you have nothing else, let's do it. Before we do, I should mention that if you want to get 15% off a week of everything at Awesemo Plus Platinum, ownership, player projections, the top stack tool, the boom bust tool, the lineup builder, top pitchers tool, not just for baseball and basketball or football or whatever. If they have contests for it, we've got content. I'm talking MMA, UFC, all of the tools out there, top fighter tool, ownership, player, fighter projections, the pro plays, and so much more, articles as well. PGA, Counter-Strike, League of Legends, NASCAR, everything you got, we got the tools for it. And again, not just articles, actual tools to help you really build your lineups and automate and improve your whole process at Awesemo. You can do a month too. You want to do a month single sport. You want to do every single sport for a year, make a legitimate investment out of it. Join our premium Slack chat. That comes with everything too. Jump into office hours where you've got the pros from Awesemo answering your questions, helping you better your game, all of that stuff. And of course, the tools built by and used by the #1 ranked DFS player out there, Alex Baker, Awesemo himself. So you know that there has been success using these tools. You could also just look at the top of the leaderboards with all of the Awesemo avatars all the time. So check it out if you'd like. If you're not ready, check out the free content we have today. It's usually behind paywall, but today NBA and MLB projections are free. And again, be sure to join premium Slack chat when you jump in. It comes with everything. And last thing, let's say you're just playing NBA right now. If you want, our Express Pass is $4.95 a week. It includes all of our content, all of our tools for Showdown on top of other content and other tools as well. But all of our Showdown projections, Showdown ownership, all of that stuff comes with the Express Pass, $4.95 a week. Go to awesemo.com/join. Or if you want to get that 15% off the week, go to awesemo.com/join. Use the promo code NBA Deeper Dive, all one word, all caps, NBA Deeper Dive. All right, talk to me about the Utah Jazz. 5-point dogs tonight was a little bit surprising to me, not going to lie. 224 total. Mike Conley is out. Donovan Mitchell is fine after that injury scare late in last game. What are you doing with the Jazz up top with Paul George and Kawhi Leonard?
Yeah, I think that was the same spread that we had last game, and then they just got worked. So, like, did you think it was going to be bigger or smaller?
I did not think that was the same spread as last game. You could absolutely be right. I'll tell you right now, go to oddshopper.com.
Because I thought I was surprised. I was surprised by whatever it was last game. I thought it was 5.
All right, let's see. Oddshopper.com, sponsor this show, by the way. It was, yeah, you're right. Okay, +5. Yeah. Huh. For some reason, I thought it was 3, but you're right. It was +5. In some spots, it was 4.5. But yeah, +5. So here it is again today.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, either way, you're getting the same thing basically here from Utah. Mike Conley again, not in the game. We've seen that happen 3 times already. So you know that it's a bump for Donovan Mitchell. During the regular season, he averaged 1.45 DraftKings points per minute in 11 games without Conley. He had about a 35% usage rate. His assist percentage jumped from 25% with Conley to about 33% without him. He's, once again, I think, one of the top options on the slate. You saw him kind of get off to a slow start last game. Kawhi Leonard was doing a pretty good job on him, but he still ended up getting there. He's still just going to play such a big role on this team and play a lot of minutes as well. You saw him play about 39 minutes in the last competitive game that these two teams played, and his salary still really hasn't come up that much. It would be a different thing if you were talking about Mitchell being priced at like 10K and, a similar price to, say, Joel Embiid, but at 9K, it's just still, I think, way too cheap of a price tag. He'll be one of the more popular guys today, and I think for good reason. You certainly can pivot to other guys in tournaments that have a similar range of outcomes, but in cash games, I'd be very surprised if I don't end up with Mitchell. Moving beyond him, you're still getting Conley being out benefits Jordan Clarkson. It benefits Joe Ingles. Ingles is still reasonably priced. He's played pretty well in the series, getting around 32 minutes per game in competitive games. And so I think still a pretty reasonable salary on him. Jordan Clarkson, a little bit more difficult to trust because he's more scoring dependent than Ingles. Ingles gives you a lot more in the way of assists, but Clarkson averaged 28 minutes per game during the regular season without Conley, played 31 minutes last game. Looks like he would have played a couple more potentially had that game gone down to the wire. So he does still give you a high ceiling. He's also just a little bit more expensive. So I think a little bit more of a tournament option to me, whereas Ingles would be the guy I trust a little bit more in cash. But those are the three guys that really benefit from Conley being out. Then you get to Bogdanovich, you get to Royce O'Neal, both guys playing big minutes. Both guys average, in Bogdanovich's case, around 0.85 or 0.8 DraftKings points per minute. O'Neal for the series is down around 0.66, but they're so cheap that they still offer you some value, particularly Bogdanovich on Fanduel, where you need two small forwards, and it's a really bad position. O'Neal at 4,900 on DraftKings is a reasonable option as well. Gobert, I think, is not affected by Conley, but I dug into him a little bit in the deep dive today, and we've seen it's an interesting situation because we've seen him have one good game in this series and two bad games. And a common thing that we were concerned about, I know it came up in YouTube chat. I know we talked about it. With the Clippers going with these smaller lineups, is it pulling Rudy Gobert away from the basket? Is it affecting his fantasy production? And if you just look at the way the games have played out, it's pretty easy to think that it is, because he has like 29 and 29 and a half fantasy points in the two games the Clippers have gone small. But his rebound chances per 36 minutes.
26.3. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Yeah, you're going per 36.
Yeah. His rebound chances per 36 minutes are about the same in those two games as they were during the regular season. His average rebound distance in those two games is about the same as it was during the regular season. Now, in the game the Clippers went big, Gobert got way more rebound chances, but there's nothing really from these two games the Clippers have gone small that is different than what was happening with Gobert during the regular season. And during the regular season, he averaged about 15 and a half rebounds per 36. So far, or in the two games the Clippers have gone small, he's at about 12 and a half. So I think, could certainly be wrong, but I think that as you get more games, you're just going to see those numbers even out, and you're going to start getting a few more rebounds for Gobert. I don't really see a reason to be concerned about him.
I'm with you. As a matter of fact, one of the props that I had lined up for today is Gobert over 12 and a half rebounds. I still think that that's a good line. Like, he had 20 rebounds, I think it was, in game 2. He's averaging, I didn't pull the per 36s, but just per game in this series, he's averaging 26.3 rebound chances per game. It's an absolutely massive number. And it's a spot that I'm 100% willing to get back to. Look, if that was our concern about pulling away from the basket, you wouldn't see that many rebound chances. And as you just pointed out, the average distance of rebound would be way, way greater than it is. So, yeah, I have no concerns about Rudy Gobert's ability to get rebounds today. And we saw, look, let's not act like he hasn't rebounded at all. He still has double-digit rebounds in all 3 games. He has 20 in one of them, 12 in another one of them. It's just the fact that he needs the blocks, and he's going to need some scoring as well. But, man, if you have 20 rebound upside, which he does, I have no problem with it. I like the over on that 12.5 too.
Yeah, his usage is down a little bit as well in these 3 games. But again, that's something where it's not down by a ton. He's at like 15.2%. That's most likely just the fact that we're talking about 3 games.
Right. Donovan Mitchell's usage is 37% since Mike Conley went down. Like, I just have a very tough time not really liking Donovan Mitchell. I've even looked at the over 30.5 points today because he's just an absolute killer, man. And, if you had hit over 30.5 points last game, which I did, if he had played his normal minutes, if he had got that extra 5 to 7 minutes, you're getting over that no problem, right? Of course, we don't know, but he finished with 30, 37 in game 2, 45 in game 1. Dude's clearly 100% healthy. And if you look at the games where he wasn't limited at all, so games 3 against Memphis and on, 30, 30, 45, 37, and 30, of which several of them were blowouts where he only played 29 minutes. He played 32 minutes. If this game's close, and we're assuming it should be, Donovan Mitchell's going to play 37, 39 minutes, and he's just going to go out there and fire away like he does every single night.
Yeah, you kind of get two different bumps for him because you get the Mike Conley being out bump, which increases his usage. But then you also get the playoff bump where ball dominant guards just take more shots. You know, you saw it in the bubble last year where Donovan Mitchell just took over. And even if Conley were playing, you would expect him to see an increase in his usage rate from what it was during the regular season anyway, because he's Donovan Mitchell and he's going to carry this team in the postseason. Then you take Conley off the floor in addition to that. And yeah, in the 3 games against the Clippers, using StatMuse's numbers, he has a 41.5% usage rate and a 29% assist percentage.
Crazy.
Like, you can't really get more involved in the offense than that.
Yeah. When you look at him compared to, say, like his price point, Trae Young, Paul George, all of them really close. Which one do you like the most?
Mitchell.
Okay, even over Paul George as well, right?
Yeah, especially because for whatever reason, Paul George is getting way more ownership on DraftKings.
Yeah, that to me makes no sense. Like, I don't think there's any reason to be worried about Donovan Mitchell's ankle. He said right after the game he's playing the next game, and if that game wasn't a blowout, he would have been back. He came back to the bench.
Right. Yeah, I didn't get it the other day when he was projected for more ownership. I don't get it today. Not saying that I necessarily disagree with the ownership projection, but if the ownership projection is right and you're going to get 54% on, going to George on DraftKings, only 35% going to Mitchell, to me, that's insane. And it's not even a knock on George. Like, if you can play them both together, then great. I think Paul George is very clearly underpriced as well. But Paul George, you're basically, and of course we'll get into a little bit more on the Clipper side, but Paul George for this series, like he's underpriced because he's playing 40 plus minutes per game and he's a good player. He's averaging like 1.14 DraftKings points per minute. Donovan Mitchell is going to give you 38 to 40 minutes in a competitive game, and his usage rate is like 14 points higher than George's.
Exactly.
And his assist percentage is higher.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. With no Mike Conley, man, what an impact that makes. There's no Kawhi Leonard playing alongside Donovan Mitchell either.
Yeah. And it's, yeah, you can say whatever you want about, maybe Kawhi Leonard is able to strap Mitchell for longer in this game than he did last game. It's not like Paul George has an easy matchup here either.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Jordan, you said you've worn the same mask for over a year. Be honest. How many times have you washed it?
That was a lie. I was just messing around.
No, now that I'm asking you that question, you're pulling
turning
back
red and blushing.
There's no chance.
No chance what?
I've worn the same mask over and over again. There's no way.
I don't know, man. You live by yourself.
I have 2 masks.
If I lived by myself, and things would get ugly. Adam could probably speak to that. Adam, have you worn masks many times without thinking about cleaning them?
Yeah, but I have a bunch of different ones.
Oh, okay. Well, good thing we don't have to worry about that shit anymore, right? All right. Anything else for Utah?
I think that's about it. If you're playing large field, I guess mention Derek Favors because he's 3K flat. If you're playing large field tournaments and hoping to get, Gobert foul trouble or something. But outside of, plugging him in and just praying, there's nothing else here, I don't think.
So on the Clippers side, I said this on the strategy show. I'll say it again. I think I said it a couple days ago too. Bojan Bogdanović has done a phenomenal job against Kawhi Leonard. And I know last game Leonard still performed well. They got the win. He had 34 points. I get it. He shot really well. But Bogdanović made life really difficult for him in games 1, especially in game 2. And I'm not saying that happens again today. I am saying I like under 29.5 points on Kawhi. And I'm also saying that his price point to me seems pretty outrageous. Maybe you can convince me that 11-2 or whatever he is on Fanduel and even 10K on DraftKings makes him a priority option. He's had some big games this series. 10,000 on DraftKings is not egregious at all. But that price on Fanduel, he was more expensive than Kevin Durant the other night.
Yeah, it doesn't make a ton of sense. Like, On FanDuel, I kind of think it makes sense because small forward's so bad and you need 2 of them. Like if you made Kawhi 9,500 or something, he's just going to be 90% owned. So the fact that the opportunity cost of the position is a little bit lower on FanDuel, I think makes the relative cost come down some, because if you don't roster him, your other alternatives are like Bogdanovich, Gallinari, and a pretty expensive Nick Batum. So you are giving up some raw points there. On DraftKings, where you have multi-position eligibility and you can, use whoever is starting at the 3 for the Sixers, down at the bottom, you can use Harris, you can use a ton of different guys, really. There's less of a case to be made for Kawhi, even though he's less expensive than on FanDuel. So I think he's actually probably more valuable on FanDuel at 11.2 than he is on DraftKings at 10K. But I feel similarly about both sites where, of course, if you get to Kawhi Leonard and you like the rest of your lineup, it's fine. Kawhi Leonard's very good. He's averaging 1.25 fantasy points per minute in the series. He's averaging 40 minutes per game in the postseason. All of that's really good. I'm just not making it a priority to spend more money for Kawhi Leonard, or almost as much money for Kawhi Leonard as I do for Joel Embiid. I'm not making it a priority to pay more for Leonard than I am for Mitchell or for Paul George. I think that Mitchell projects higher, and I think that Leonard, the price gap between Leonard and George is too big.
Donald, no, I did not say Kawhi is going to snowflake. I said that I think tonight's matchup, and really the matchup that he's faced throughout this series, has actually been relatively difficult. Paul George, and you make some good points there, talking about just how that pricing is a little bit different at first glance than it is once you actually start looking at the structure of both of those sites. Paul George, though, the ownership, the highest projected ownership on DraftKings right now, 54%. And on FanDuel, he's not exactly going overlooked either. And of course, you got to play 2 shooting guards, but coming up close to 50% on FanDuel.
Yeah, it's like, I get it. I agree he's underpriced. It just doesn't make sense to me relative to Paul George. Also, right. How is Trae Young getting more ownership than Donovan Mitchell?
That part to me is absurd. I don't know what it is. Is it this assumption that like Donovan Mitchell just isn't at the same level as those guys? Because he's proven that he is.
Yeah, I mean, I have no idea what it is. I don't know if the ownership projections end up being wrong. I don't know if the field ends up being wrong, but one of those two is going to end up being wrong. Yeah, like if the ownership projections are right, the field just screwed up.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it. What do you make of the rotation that we saw Tyler run late in the game, really from the like 3 quarters through the third quarter all the way to the end, where Terrence Mann was out there, Marcus Morris didn't come back? I know they grabbed a big lead there and continued to run away with it, but that's like one of the smallest lineups you're ever going to see.
Yeah, I'm not reading too much into it because the Clippers did go on a 19-3 run about halfway through the fourth quarter, when I think you would have seen some guys sub back in. I think that the biggest takeaway is that, and this is assuming obviously that they start the small lineup again, because you had Zubats coming off the bench, you had DeMarcus Cousins not in the rotation. That moved Terrence Mann back into the rotation along with Kennard, who'd been there, along with Beverly, who played 16 minutes, including garbage time. I'm not anticipating you get like another 22 minutes from Terrence Mann. I am anticipating that Terrence Mann is once again in the rotation, which at $3,100 is certainly something you can take a shot on in tournaments. He's played very well. The Clippers have played very well when Mann's been on the floor this postseason. So the playing time is still risky. Like on average, I think you're probably getting 16 or so minutes from Mann, but there's obviously a path if he's playing well or the team is playing well while he's out there for him to get 20 plus minutes, which makes him a pretty appealing tournament option at 3,100 as long as he's not getting too much ownership.
All right, close out the rest of the Clippers for me. Marcus Morris, Nick Batum, both of them price points seem a little strange, just given that the minutes upside is definitely there, and it's certainly being reflected in the ownership as well.
I was surprised. I thought we were going to get a similar ownership projection between Batum and Morris as we did between Gallinari and Herter, just because of how last game went. Batum played like 35 minutes, had a good game, scored 32 DraftKings points. Morris gave you 12 DraftKings points in 22 minutes. I thought maybe you would see a lot of ownership going to Batum and not much going to Morris, in which case taking some shots on Morris makes a lot of sense because, like you said, the playing time upside's still there. I think Morris just got burned by the fact that the Clippers went on that run without him on the floor and he never came back. He has struggled in the postseason from a fantasy standpoint, only about 2/3 of a fantasy point per minute. But in 17 starts during the regular season with George and Kawhi, he averaged 0.81 DraftKings points per minute. We have seen the rebounding numbers tick up a bit when he started without Zubats, which I expect to be the case tonight. So I still think there's value on Marcus Morris at 4,300. Of course, he has a low floor. We've seen him show it several times, but I think the price factors that in when you also consider that he has a path to playing 34 plus minutes. And then the same goes for Batum. If he plays poorly, you could certainly see him lose minutes to any number of guys, Kennard, Mann, Morris. There's a lot of ways the Clippers can go, Zubats, but assuming he plays relatively well, he's around the 3/4 of a fantasy point per minute guy, and he's averaging 34 minutes per game in the 6 starts he's made this postseason. So I think both of Batum and Morris look like very good point per dollar values.
I like it. Anything else for the Clippers, or that do it for us?
Reggie Jackson still playing a bunch of minutes. Played 29 minutes last game, lost 3 to garbage time. He's averaged about 0.9 DraftKings points per minute as a starter in the postseason. So he's another one that, at 5,200, even though the matchup is tough, I think gives you a pretty nice ceiling.
He's shooting lights out in this series too. It's insane what he's doing from 3. He's 14 for 19 from 3 in this series.
Yeah, pretty insane. Like, obviously that's not going to continue, but
of course
the salary doesn't really reflect it. Like, it would be one thing if Jackson were like 6,500 now, but he's not.
Yeah, I wasn't suggesting you play him because of that. I was suggesting that he probably can't continue to shoot like 70% from 3.
Yeah, and I was just clarifying that, like, in a lot of cases, if someone's been shooting that well, they end up being a bad DFS play because their salary reflects it.
But he's cheap.
But it hasn't come up.
Yeah, right, exactly. If that was if that mirrored what we'd been seeing from him, and he's like Bogdanovich price, Bogdan Bogdanovich, that's different. But you're right, he hasn't really budged at all, which is even stranger. Maybe that game where he fouled out had something to do with it and bugged out the algorithm. I don't know. I do know that Josh Engleman and Greg Ehrenberg are coming up next. Appreciate you guys hanging out as always. We're 13 away from 400 likes. So while you wait, be much obliged if you hit that thumbs up if you enjoy this content and subscribe to the channel. We'll see you guys back here tomorrow. Hit Adam up at ShipMyMoney DFS on the Twitters, myself at Laffy_D, and Awesemo at Awesemo NBA or Awesemo_com. See you back here tomorrow on the Deeper Dive presented by Odd Shoppers.
Now, brown cow. I can't hear what you're saying anyway, so. And we are live. Welcome to NBA Live Before Lock. It is Monday, June 14th. I am Josh Engleman. I am joined by Greg Ehrenberg. And we're here to break down one of the final 2 game slates we're going to be getting in the near future, that's for sure. Could all be done on Wednesday. We shall see. I don't want them to go away, but the NBA has to season. And NBA season has to end at some point in time. I'm okay with that. And the way that stars are dropping right now, maybe we're better off ending it quicker. Greg, what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, listen, if from a basketball watching standpoint, yeah, I prefer the 2 game slates. From a personal standpoint, though, get rid of these West Coast games because, I mean, the live before lock slates where we're doing these until, 9:30, 10 o'clock, not particularly ideal, especially on, like a Friday or Saturday night. But hey, listen, don't mind it too much. The games have, generally been good, and go Chris Paul and the Suns.
I agree. Go Chris Paul and the Suns. I'm with you there. Shout out to Odd Shopper for being the presenting sponsor of this show. We'll talk a little bit about Odd Shopper in a bit. Touch on a couple player props as well. I got 4 of them pulled for you. I want to hit you with the goods, see where you stand. We got lots to talk about. We have plenty of time to do it. So let's just start here. Let's take a look at FanDuel. Let's look at the overall landscape. Who are your favorite plays on FanDuel for today?
Yeah, so it is pretty hard for me to get away from Paul George at shooting guard. And why did I just accidentally delete my lineups? But anyway, I remembered it was pretty hard for me to get away from Paul George on FanDuel, just running this now. But I don't know why I accidentally clicked X on my lineups there. But yeah, so Paul George, who needs the players? Paul George is the player that I was getting the most exposure to. Just looking at the overall shooting guard position. There aren't that many great options overall. Donovan Mitchell priced all the way up to 9,700 now. I do have Paul George projected for slightly more fantasy points today. And then you go down. Joe Ingles has been priced up a little bit now. Bogdanovich now priced up to 6,700. I think that he is, a fine shooting guard play, but still, I'd rather pay up for Paul George. And then you go down to some of the cheaper guys. We have Furkan Korkmaz at 4,700. I don't think he's the best cheap play, but in terms of that high range, it's Paul George for me.
That's interesting. So I'd like to have a bigger conversation. I'm grabbing the updated ownership now just to make sure that I have everything correct. Last update 29 minutes ago, just in case you haven't grabbed one yet. So as long as we're on the same page there. The ownership for Paul George and Donovan Mitchell is really curious to me. We're talking close to double to Paul George. Now, obviously, Donovan Mitchell is slightly more expensive at $500. Does that gap concern you at all?
I don't think the ownership is. I'm not convinced that's what the ownership's actually going to be. Because if we go back to last slate the other day, Paul George, he was projected for, I think it was 90% ownership in the showdown slate, and he ended up being 70%. And I think we've seen a lot of slates recently where Paul George is projected for a lot more ownership than Donovan Mitchell, and that hasn't been the case. So if this is the actual ownership, then yeah, I would say it is problematic. I just don't think that's what it's going to be.
Okay. I do have Paul George in terms of odds of being in the optimal 5% higher than Donovan Mitchell. That does not at all correspond to the 20% gap in ownership. So I am with you that I prefer Paul George to Donovan Mitchell. But if I knew that ownership was real, I would play them slightly differently in GPPs.
Yeah, I think that's totally reasonable. I just tend to think they're going to be pretty close in ownership based on what we've seen so far in this series, because, we've seen a lot of these games get repeated. And you kind of start to pick up on trends. And, that's one thing that I've noticed is that we have seen, pretty tight ownership between Donovan Mitchell and Paul George to this point.
Now, you did say that you weren't as interested, I believe, I don't want to misquote you, in Bogdanovich.
So he is my 3rd favorite shooting guard play overall. I'm not as interested in him as I am Paul George. Current exposures, It's Paul George 1, Furkan Korkmaz 2, and Bogdanovich 3.
Okay. Bogdanovich is my number one shooting guard for today. And those three guys are pretty clearly those top three. So I don't have like qualms with the order or anything, but I am prioritizing Bogdanovich a bit more over Mitchell and over Paul George. I really like the $6,700 price tag, and his minutes feel good. If Atlanta is going to move into a 2-2 series instead of a 3-1 series, I think Bogdanovich kind of has to play well, or at least that's my hope.
Yeah, it's I think he's a better DraftKings play than Fanduel play.
Sure.
I think that it's just the positionality, and that I do prefer, Paul George and Furkan Korkmaz. Like I said, there's more flexibility where I have lineups on DraftKings with all three of them, and just not able to do that on Fanduel. But either way, I mean, he's my third favorite shooting guard, so it's not like I'm totally poo-pooing him as a play.
For sure. Any other positions that you're pretty firm on? Anybody where you see someone standing out pretty dramatically?
Let's see. Relative to ownership, it's always funny for a 2-game slate because there'll be guys who's like, oh, I have this guy in a lot of my lineups. Then it's kind of like, well, the field does too. So it all ends up kind of being the same. Shake Milton, I view as a pretty different play on FanDuel versus DraftKings. DraftKings at 3,200. I view him as one of the stronger value plays on the slate. 3,900 on FanDuel. While it's still a playable salary in itself, he's really popular. And 25% for Shake Milton when, Reggie Jackson's 30%, Jordan Clarkson 40%, Ben Simmons 35%. Like all these guys are, relatively close in ownership. And with that in mind, I think that Shake Milton's going a little bit over-owned on FanDuel, but once again, different play on FanDuel versus DraftKings. So the stand, I have about half as much exposure to Milton as the field right now.
Completely agree with you. We have 46% ownership going to Shake Milton, George Hill, Patrick Beverley. I would just rather give all of that additional ownership to Jackson, Clarkson, Simmons, and Young if I could. And part of the reason that I have a little bit more Bogdanovich is because I think that I like Trae Young and Ben Simmons a little bit more. So I'm paying up more at point guard than I am at shooting guard. Still getting to those same guys from before, but I really do like getting to Trae Young in this case. Even at 9,700, I don't mind him at all today.
No, neither do I. Once again, somebody's different FanDuel versus DraftKings though. FanDuel, I think, still, I mean, he's projecting for, nearly half of the field's lineups. So to me, that's just still kind of a neutral play overall. Whereas DraftKings with a cheaper price point, I'm getting to him more.
Is it possible to even have a take at power forward on FanDuel today? Because the power forwards are, as best I can tell, Tobias Harris, John Collins, Royce O'Neal, Marcus Morris, and George Niang. Like you kind of just have to be like, all right, well, I like all the guys that can play there because except for George Niang.
So if I had a take, it would be why is Amir Coffey projected for 3% ownership? That's the take. Why is Nathan Knight projected for 5% ownership? That's a take. Other than that, I mean, like what else do you do with these guys that I am? There's 4 viable options. Niang only in play because maybe he scores 8 fantasy points at 3,700, and Royce O'Neal, Marcus Moore, maybe like 3 of the high-end guys just shit the bed. And then Niang just kind of ends in the optimal because a bunch of other high-priced guys go off at other positions. But for all intents and purposes, there's 4 viable power forward options.
Yeah, I don't really have many takes. It's just like you got to play these 4 guys, and you can pretty much pick whoever you want. Like I prefer John Collins and Marcus Morris, but I would have 40% of Tobias Harris and Royce O'Neal too. So it's a really weird position there today. Blew my mind. Let's close it out with likes and dislikes at the center spot. Obviously, we could pay up to Joel Embiid at 11,200. We've got Rudy Gobert at 8,700. Clint Capella at 7,300. And he's having a very weird series. And then you probably don't have one, or you take the 29% ownership that we have going to Zubac, Dwight Howard, DeMarcus Cousins, Derek Favors, and Okongwu. Is it really just a 3-horse race?
For me, it is. I mean, if you're playing 150 lineups and you've 1 or 2 with any of, Zubac, Howard, Favors, those type of guys, just to have them in your player pool, that would be fine. If you're playing 5, 10, 20 lineups, there's no reason to consider anybody but the top 3 guys. And of those guys, my favorite play is Capella just for pricing reasons.
I don't know what to do with him because I do think that he is under-owned based on my data, but I don't feel comfortable about it. I don't really like the idea. Like I like the Sixers for the game, and I don't think that Capella is all that likely to just like have a dominant performance against Joel Embiid, and then the Sixers also still somehow like lose that game, or win that game rather. So my heart says I don't want to get to Capella, and my data says that I would get to Capella, and I don't really know how. I mean, obviously, I always lean with data. I don't ever make plays based on like my hunch. It's just a tricky spot right now for him. I don't know what to do with him. I don't know. His minutes could be anything today, and I believe it.
I mean, kind of, because it's going to depend on foul trouble. And also, I mean, it is reasonable to think that Joel Embiid is more apt to get him in foul trouble than other centers. But, you know, 2 of the 3 games in the series, he's picked up 5 personal fouls. And at the same time, too, he's somebody who's 7,300 on FanDuel. We've seen him priced over 10,000 on FanDuel at times this year. So I still view him and project him as the best value on the slate. But I do agree with you. I don't think this is an ideal matchup for Capella. And if I was to go with my just heart, it would be Joel Embiid. But there's pricing concerns, and Joel Embiid is really expensive. And at least on FanDuel, there are not that many cheap guys to get to, especially where Furkan Korkmaz is 4,700 on FanDuel as compared to his 3,500 price on DraftKings. So if Joel Embiid was cheaper, which, I mean, this is going to sound dumb and obvious, but yes, if Joel Embiid was cheaper, I get to him a ton. But just because the pricing is what it is, I'm just kind of getting funneled to Clint Capella.
But that's why we pay you the big bucks, man. I would play these good guys a lot more if they didn't have as high as salaries.
Yeah, why can't Joel Embiid be min priced and I get to him in all my lineups? But that's really what it is. I don't think this is the best matchup for Clint Capella, but 7,300 is really cheap from relative to what he's been priced for most of the season.
I think Clint Capella's minutes would be like the most important thing you could know for a fact before a lock. Because if I told you that Clint Capella played 34 minutes, I would assume that he's going to be the center that you have to have today.
The thing that would be most important for me to know is which player off the Sixers bench plays the most minutes today, because it's been so random as of late where it's like, hey, Matisse Thybulle game, Shake Milton goes from 0 minutes to like, hey, Shake Milton scores over 20 fantasy points in 14 minutes. And it's like, oh, Furkan Korkmaz game last time out. So that would be the number one thing that would be most important to me, is just who plays the most minutes of the Phillies bench guys, of the Sixers bench, because I do feel like there's just going to be another random Sixer that has a big game.
That's fair. I had a similar thought process earlier today. Is there anybody in the ownership that you're seeing on FanDuel right now that you think is going quite a bit over-owned?
Unfortunately, Kawhi Leonard. I just think of the high-end guys, I find him the most difficult to get to, priced all the way up to 11,200. I'd rather pay up for Joel Embiid. I'd rather pay up for Trae Young. If we're including Ben Simmons of those pay-up options, I'd rather pay up for Ben Simmons. It's a really steep price tag for Kawhi Leonard, and the matchup against the Jazz is really not that great. He scored under 40 fantasy points in 2 of the 3 games so far.
I'm with you. I don't really understand the Kawhi one. The weirder part to me is that I just don't understand why he's not just simply priced lower.
Yeah, that too. I mean, even his DraftKings price is a little bit hard for me to get to, and that's what, 1,200 less than he is on FanDuel.
Right. Yeah. 11,200 is like, he's obviously one of the small forwards that you can play, but we're talking about a 5-person position. I don't think that you and I are going to be going to too many shares of Solomon Hill or Tony Snell. Yeah. So it's Bojan Bogdanovic, Kawhi, Batum, Gallo, and Thybulle. To me, those are the only legitimate options that you can get to. You're almost forced to pay down. The fact that 1/3 of lineups are going to have Kawhi, that's really interesting to me, because right out of the gate, he basically has to beat Joel Embiid to be in an optimal lineup. It's going to be very hard to have both of those guys. We're going to have some really weird pay down options otherwise. So just from that perspective, if he doesn't beat Embiid, he's probably not going to be in there just because of the prices of the rest of these small forwards. So I'm with you. It's a weird spot. If he were 10,200, I think that would really change the scope. Although I guess if we're right and he's 36% owned at 11.2, what in the world would his ownership be if he were 10.2?
It would be very significant. By the way, you hit on something there. I'm going to do a little thought experiment, something we've done before. I'm going to lock in Kawhi Leonard and Joel Embiid and run lineups and see what other players come up, because I cannot imagine that these are very desirable lineups. No. So which players would you guess come up the most in Kawhi Leonard and Joel Embiid lineups?
Korkmaz. Wait, no, he's expensive on FanDuel, right?
I mean, 4,700. So he's still going to pop up anyway.
Yeah. He's let's see. Reggie Jackson.
It really pinches Trae Young and Ben Simmons. Like, they are almost impossible to get to. They come up in single digit lineup. So it's a lot of Jordan Clarkson, Reggie Jackson, and Shake Milton at point guard. Then shooting guard becomes a lot of Bogdanovic and Korkmaz. Small forward, obviously Kawhi, one of the spots, and beyond that, it's Bogdanovich
Capella
and
at center, I'm
Thibault.
guessing.
No,
we have
because
Embiid
we Embiid locked, yeah. And then just power forward becomes Marcus Morris, John Collins, Royce O'Neal. So you're basically the real thing cuts out is you end up being really cheap at point guard if you lock in Kawhi and Embiid.
Feels risky to me.
Not my preferred play.
Nope, not at all. Anybody else standing out to you as over-owned on FanDuel for today?
No, I think those are pretty much the big ones. I mean, I think the hottest take is really that I think Kawhi Leonard is over-owned, just because I think he's so difficult to get to.
That works for me. All righty. Schedule for the rest of the night is easy. There aren't any more shows after this. So unfortunately, we can't just keep you around any longer. We'll be done here, but we'll be right back at it again tomorrow. No changes whatsoever. No process show tomorrow, by the way. Only one game. No more process shows if we only have a single game. So you guys can sleep in along with me and then just watch the contenders videos. And let me tell you what, sleeping in tomorrow is going to be a very glorious feeling. Free content for. Ooh, go ahead, hit me.
This was just just human interesting. When you don't have to get up at like 3 a.m. to do YouTube shows, what time do you sleep to normally?
If this is just like a normal day to day, whatever, probably like 6:30.
Still pretty early.
It's not that I want that either, but because of waking up so frequently at 5:15. I get to a point where like I can't sleep much further than that. Like my body's just like, yeah, you were supposed to be up an hour ago. I mean, back in the day, it would have been noon, but I can't do that any longer. So yeah, probably somewhere in that 6:30 to 7 range.
Yeah, I can't remember the last time I slept until like 9:30, and I don't have to do shows nearly as early as you. Like I get up at like 7:30, 8 o'clock, the latest most days.
Yeah. I like getting up early. There's something about getting a cup of coffee and like nothing's really going on in the world that makes me feel a little bit more productive.
We are so washed.
Oh man, free content, free premium content, in fact, for today. And it's in the player projections variety. Whether you're playing NBA or MLB, the projections are free. So go to awesemo.com, check it out. Nightbot probably dropping that link in there as well. Free NBA player projections, free MLB player projections. It's a great time to go check them out. No giveaways or anything today, so I could pull that out of the run sheet that I'm reading that no one else is looking at other than probably Jordan. So it wouldn't have mattered anyway. Let's move on to DraftKings. Very different salary structures coming on today. The Sixers pay down value all sort of looks different shades of good depending on how you feel like it's going to shake out. Who are your favorite plays on DK for today?
Did you say shake out as a pun? Was that intended?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I mean, Shake Milton at 3,200, I do think is a good value play on DraftKings, but overall the best value play to me, I think has to be Furkan Korkmaz. He played so many minutes last game after Danny Green got hurt, and the Sixers have done really weird things with the rotations. Certainly the role players have been difficult to predict at times, but Korkmaz is so cheap on DraftKings, and I have him projected as the best points per dollar play by a pretty wide margin on the slate. And if you look at his numbers overall as a starter this year, and I am expecting he's going to started 11 games in the regular season, averaged 22.5 fantasy points in those starts. If he just has an average performance for him based on his regular season starts, then he's probably ending up in the optimal lineup.
I assume that we're on the same page with this statement. Whoever that fifth starter is the guy we like the most from the Sixers.
Yes, for sure.
Like if that ends up being Thibault, everything we just said becomes the same conversation for Thibault for me. If it ends up being Shake or Maxey or George Hill or whatever it is, whatever one of those guys is going to be in, he instantly becomes the safest option because his minutes seem different. Any of those guys that you don't like?
I guess George Hill, but I mean, it's not like the field's on him anyway. And I mean, the 3% ownership is reasonable. But no, I mean, I'm on Shake Milton, I'm on Furkan Korkmaz, I'm on Matisse Thybulle. So I think that Thybulle actually right now only 15% projected ownership is probably a little bit too low for him. I think that's a number to be overweight to. So no, I think especially considering this, there's a 2-game slate. A lot of the stars are going to play big minutes. And I think that, Trae Young going to have to play massive minutes because the spot he's in. Embiid's been ridiculous this series. Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. Kawhi, I think, is a better play on DraftKings than he is on FanDuel. He's going to have to play a lot of minutes. Paul George is going to play a lot of minutes. And it's hard to find value outside of those Sixers guys. So I feel just kind of forced to play them.
Got a super chat from Gerald. So thank you, Gerald. He said, hey, Josh, FanDuel center, only 5 lineups. Lock Capella or Embiid? ?
I wouldn't lock either.
Right.
Even if you're only playing 5 lineups. I said before, my favorite center play is Capella. So if you absolutely are committed to playing the same center in all 5 of your lineups, which is not what I would do, I would play Capella in all 5. But I guess 5 lineups, my exposure would probably be 3 Capella, 1 Embiid, and 1 Gobert.
I'd be fine going like 3-2 either direction. If you wanted to just stick to Capella and Embiid and think to yourself like, well, one of them will succeed. Like if Capella gets into foul trouble, Joel Embiid is probably on one. If Capella is able to play like 34 minutes, it's probably not a big Embiid game at that point. I'd feel comfortable having one of the two if that's the scenario. Not to say that I don't like going to Rudy Gobert. To me, it's kind of easier. Like if you only got 5 lineups, you have to take some sort of path, and just cornering the market on the Sixers Hawks center option seems pretty easy enough. So cue the Rudy Gobert 9 block game today.
And no, I agree with you though. He's definitely my least favorite center of the 3.
All right. So who else are we looking at for DraftKings? We already touched a little bit on our boy Korkmaz. What are your other priorities at the top for DK?
Yeah. So, I'm trying to get Trae Young and Joel Embiid into a lot of lineups together. I think that's a good correlation. I think that also we're going to see Trae Young play, I think, a very heavy workload, considering that this is a home game for Atlanta. They're down 2-1 in the series. If they don't win today, they're basically boned. They're not going to win more. They're not going to win 2 more games in Philadelphia. So I think that Trae Young is more likely to play over 40 minutes today than he is to play under 40 minutes. Also, I think that his price relatively favorable today. So Trae Young and Joel Embiid are my favorite pay-up options.
Trae Young is my favorite pay-up option on DK. We're in the same page there. I don't have as much Embiid. I'm mostly just with the field at this point in time. I'm getting to a little bit more Donovan Mitchell, and we can dig into that in a little bit. But I got to go to the main question here. What are your thoughts on 51% owned Paul George? He is the chalk play of the day on DK because for reasons unknown to me, Paul George, who was, I believe, first team All-NBA either last year or 2 years ago, I think it was 2 years ago, and is playing 40 minutes in the playoffs, is 8,600.
Yeah, the price is dumb. And I still have him around even with the field. It's real. And also the other thing too with Paul George, people make fun, no matter what Paul George does, people are generally making fun of him online. He's been playing pretty well in the playoffs. And if you look at his box scores, he has scored over 45 DraftKings points now in all but 2 playoff games, or all but 3. The first game against Dallas, he was under. So all but 3 playoff games, we've gotten 45 plus fantasy points from Paul George. I think he's probably more likely to score over 50 than he needs to score under 50. And the price is just wrong. So to me, Paul George, at least relative to his ownership, it doesn't make him the best play on DraftKings, but relative to his salary, he's the best play of the high ends, if that makes sense.
27% usage. He's played the most minutes of any Clipper in the playoffs so far. 59% true shooting. That's obviously not Kawhi Leonard's numbers, but at 8,600 doesn't have to be. So he's obviously a no-brainer cash game play today on DraftKings. If you do not have Paul George in your cash game lineup, you are 1,000% doing something incorrectly. Just put that out there right now. Does 51% feel too high, though?
To be honest, it doesn't. If you were to ask me, do I think the ownership ultimately ends up higher or lower? It's going to depend on the stakes of the contest, especially because Paul George is such a polarizing player. So in low stakes, I wouldn't be surprised if people just take stands and be like, I don't like Paul George. I am not playing him in my tournament lineups. Whereas in high stakes, he's going to be projected really well. And he's probably going to be like 75 to 80% owned in high stakes. So it's really going to depend on, I know it's a wishy-washy answer, but it's really going to depend on what stakes the contest is.
I was going to say that he'll be 80% owned in high stakes stuff. So we were right on the same page there. Anybody else that you're getting to, anybody significantly above the field, guys that you think the public is a little bit underrepresented on?
One more thing about how many minutes did you give Paul George? I gave him 42.
I gave him 40. I don't think the 40. I don't think the 42 is outlandish at all. I generally sit on 40 until the game becomes like a elimination game or game 6, game 7, where you can see guys really get into the top. But if you ask me if I thought he could play 42, absolutely. It wouldn't change anything for me in this scenario. He already projects incredibly.
Yeah. 44 minutes 2 games ago, played 38 minutes last game. And that was only because it was a blowout, or else he was playing massive amount of minutes again. Let's see. Do we have all right. No ownership. No new ownership. I thought maybe there might've been nuance. So I wanted to refresh to make sure I'm looking at the right ownership. Not the exact, I'm going to answer this the opposite of the way you asked it now, looking at the players. This is going to feel uncomfortable, but underweight to Donovan Mitchell. He's projecting for a whole bunch of ownership on DraftKings, and I have Trae Young projected higher, Paul George projected higher, Joel Embiid projected higher. And Donovan Mitchell, while he's played, totally out of his mind in the playoffs during the time that we've seen Mike Conley out, the usage rating is through the roof. Definitely a little bit concerned about his health right now. And then there's just other guys around him that I've projected higher. He was not some excellent fantasy producer relative to these other guys in the regular season. And he needs to keep up that 40% usage rate to be that guy. And while I think the usage is going to be massive for him, it's hard for me to continue to expect 40+%.
You have Paul George ahead of him in raw points, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I have a lot more Mitchell, so read into that how you would like. I'm not happy about it. I don't really like Donovan Mitchell, and it doesn't feel great. But right now, I am playing quite a bit of Donovan Mitchell. 9K works for me. No Conley. I'm going to take one last shot at it. He's been. I am a little nervous about the ankle. I'll say that much. But 1.4 FanDuel points per minute so far in the playoffs, 38% usage, and a crisp 62% true shooting. I assume he keeps shooting 44% from 3, right? That seems reasonable.
Here's the other issue also. So the usage and the efficiency has been, pretty crazy this series, and even going back to last series. But the last 2 games, he scored 47 and 48 DraftKings points. And to me, this is him doing everything possible to maximize his fantasy value. And with me just expecting some regression coming, and the price has gone so high up. I mean, 9,000 for Mitchell. I never would have paid this price in the regular season. And even though the postseason is a little different, it just feels like such an overreaction to some of the recent things that have happened with him.
I have not said a single word about hitting that like button yet. We've got almost 1,700 people in here. I can see that we're slow. We are under 500 likes. So now is the time to ask. If you can, please hit the like button. It helps us out a ton. We need some sort of gimmick where when we ask to hit the like button, like Jordan hits a button and like a confetti bomb goes off with a big thumbs up or something pops up. Anyway, we'll work on that. Hit the like button because it helps us. Subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, all that good stuff. It really helps us grow. The bigger that we get, the more that we can provide this content for you. Spoiler alert, this YouTube content is free. You guys get to watch this. You don't have to subscribe to Awesemo. We want you to. It's really awesome if you do that, but the likes help. And if that's the only currency you got to spend is one click on a thumbs up, why not do it? Why not help us out? Who's over-owned on DraftKings today?
Well, I just said Mitchell, and so I'll keep scrolling down, see some of the other guys. But I'm sorry, I'm answering all your questions in inverse now, just because I'm looking at the players, so I don't miss anybody, just how we have them project for ownership right now. So I said Donovan Mitchell. You asked me who was under-owned. I said Donovan Mitchell was over-owned. Now you're asking me who's over-owned, and I'm going to say that Furkan Korkmaz is under-owned at 33%, because I think he warrants a lot more ownership, especially assuming that he starts, and that is currently my expectation. Is that Korkmaz starts. I have him playing just under 30 minutes, right around in line with what he did in the regular season, touched on that before, but he was good from a fantasy perspective relative to his current salary when he started.
I'm with you. I have a lot more Korkmaz than the public. I think that he might actually end up being a bit more owned than that, particularly if and when that news comes out. We did get some news that has absolutely nothing to do with today's slate, but I'll read it off anyway because it's the NBA. The all NBA, the all defense teams have been announced. Have you seen the tweet?
I have not.
Okay. First team. Don't think that there's going to be any sort of craziness here. Rudy Gobert, Ben Simmons, Draymond Green, Giannis, Drew Holiday. By the way, good luck scoring against that team if you had to. Oh my God. They're never going to score. Rudy Gobert can't shoot. Ben Simmons can't shoot. Draymond can't shoot. Giannis can't shoot. Drew Holiday is going to be just bombs away.
The floor space can be problematic.
Yeah, a little bit. Might not matter. They might just be too big for everybody else too. But anyway, second team, Bam Adebayo, Jimmy Butler, Joel Embiid, Kawhi Leonard, and Matisse Thybulle.
I love Thibault so much. I mean, taking aside what he did to us in DFS, like, what was that, 17 days ago or something like that, which was, that was absolutely terrible, where he was just a lock button play for me, and he totally stunk it up, ended up playing like 17 minutes, got into foul trouble and just sucked. But he's so good on defense, and I think it's totally deserved, but it's crazy that people were able to recognize that even in the limited minutes he played.
That's how good he is, that he can play 18 minutes a game as basically bench wing for the Sixers. And everybody's just like, yeah, he's as good as it gets. Makes me sad that Miles Turner didn't make the team. Miles Turner earned the 5th most votes as a forward, not a center. You can only get 4 guys in, obviously. So on the outside looking in, had a fantastic season. Probably getting hurt at the end did not help him. And I obviously stand for Miles Turner pretty aggressively.
Yeah, I think, and it's all relative to ownership, but I don't think there was any guy who at more slates, you said you were overweight to the field on this year. There was a lot of slates where he was, like 1% owned and you were, like 5 or 6X on him. But yeah, I don't think there was a Pacer slate this year that you were not overweight on Miles Turner.
Miles Turner should have been the starting center of the Boston Celtics this year. And I think that changes their season a little bit, but that's neither here nor there. Did we do over-owned?
I said
other than Donovan Mitchell.
Other over-owned. I have a little bit less Kawhi Leonard than the field. It's really just for me personally. I don't want to load up on Paul George and Kawhi Leonard in the same lineups. And Paul George is such a better points per dollar play, in my opinion, than Kawhi Leonard, with a $1,400 price difference between them. I don't think that Kawhi Leonard by any means is a bad play points per dollar. I think he kind of is on FanDuel, but it's just on DraftKings. I'd rather roster Paul George, Trae Young, Joel Embiid, and it's a little hard for me to get to Kawhi Leonard. So I think him being a third of the field's lineups, that's a little much in my opinion.
I'm really light on a lot of the Sixers other than Korkmaz. Like, I'm pretty neutral to Embiid, but light on Simmons, light on Harris. I'd like to get to more Thibault at 3,100 because he could obviously have a monster day. He could also have 0 fantasy points in 18 minutes and just sort of be out there. So there's that. But right now, Philly is the team that I'm lightest on, which, as I mentioned at the top of the show, concerns me greatly because I think Philly wins this game. And I don't like at all when those things aren't going in the same order. So fade Philly in DFS, bet on Philly in real life. You'll feel pretty okay one way or the other, I'm guessing. Anything else you want to touch on for DraftKings?
Let's see. Other over-owned guys. I agree with you on Tobias Harris. Ben Simmons, I have more of than Tobias Harris, but I'm still overweight to it. I mean, still underweight to him. But yeah, Harris, I'm pretty significantly underweight to it. 8,100. That's another price point that I find really difficult to get to on this slate.
A couple more all defense thoughts because I find it fascinating and I just want to keep reading them. Simmons and Gobert were the only 2 players to be voted first team on every ballot, 100 out of 100. Marcus Smart finished 6th among guards. And makes me sad here. Jakob Poeltl didn't get a vote at all. Not surprised. Obviously, the center crop at the top with Embiid and Gobert kind of blocks Poeltl out from being represented at all, but excellent defensive season.
I want to see who Greg Logan voted for. I mean, he didn't have a vote, but who he would have.
Is he the Andre Drummond guy?
Yeah, he voted Andre. By the way, he has doubled and tripled down on that since then. So the other thing that's also really funny about this saga, and I assume most people don't know about this, but so Greg Logan is a bad NBA writer who last year had voting privileges, and he voted Andre Drummond for Defensive Player of the Year, and his second place vote was for Hassan Whiteside. And the NBA took his vote away, which he's been complaining about all season, which is really funny. But then he's also making up these stories. Korkmaz starting?
Yep.
Perfect. All right. So that's not going to change anything for me. That was what I assumed. Korkmaz best value play on DraftKings.
Yep. We're on the same page. Yeah. The saga of him like losing his mind again is really fun.
Yeah. And then he just starts making stuff. He's like, I talked to NBA coaches and they told me that they agreed with my vote for Andre Drummond. Meanwhile, Andre Drummond has been available for trades last 2 years and nobody offered anything for him, which makes me think that NBA teams don't value Andre Drummond as much as he says that they agree with him on.
Let's also not forget that Hassan Whiteside signed for the league minimum with the Sacramento Kings. So
and didn't play for them and they sucked.
Yes. And was useless as well. So that would be a little bit of a sign like, this was my second best defensive guy. And he can't even get like the shittiest team in the league to play him.
Yeah, and he looks at nothing but blocks per game.
Yeah. All right. Soul Dope with the super chat, and for reasons that I'm incredibly confused by, it's not a 6v6 for FanDuel. He says, Greg, Fam versus Tyler O'Neill and top prize picks for NBA. So, Greg, talk a little bit about Fam versus Tyler O'Neill if you can, and let the people know what you got going on for prize picks.
All right. So for it's pretty easy. Tommy Pham over Tyler O'Neill. Tyler O'Neill, has hit well over the last couple of weeks, but Tommy Pham is playing at Coors Field. Also, the temperature last I looked, Josh, look at this. Coors Field game projected for 101 degrees today, and the San Diego Padres is one of the best offenses in baseball. So stands to reason that that's a pretty good spot for their offense. Also, Tommy Pham looks healthy, playing much better now than he did earlier in the season. Also, Tommy Pham got stabbed outside of a strip club in the offseason. That's just more information there. But I don't know that should impact who you pick there, but just a fun fact there. But Tommy Pham would be the pick for me there. Prize picks now. Let's see. I'm pulling this up now because I had not looked at it before. So I'm just going to compare some of these guys relative to my projections. By the way, prize picks, if you guys aren't familiar with how it works, same exact scoring system as FanDuel. So if you are on prize picks and you want to look at our projections, go to awesemo.com, look at the FanDuel projections we have, and you can just compare those to the prize picks plays and you get a good feel for who the best plays are there. So Clint Capella is over under 32 fantasy points. We talked about him as a little bit polarizing on FanDuel before, maybe a little bit inconsistent there. I certainly haven't projected for more than 32 fantasy points on FanDuel. How about you, Josh?
Like I'm at 34.1. So,
okay. Yeah. All right. So,
I mean, so like a 2-point gap is a pretty big one.
Oh, actually, this is going to be interesting too. Let's see. Korkmaz. Okay. I'm going to like the over on. So here's my two favorite ones at first glance here. It is Clint Capella over 32 and Furkan Korkmaz now officially starting over 17 fantasy points.
I have him at 17.6. So that one is pretty efficient for me. I would be looking at John Collins, Bogdan Bogdanovic. I think they both look a little low. Kawhi Leonard, 53. Feels a little high. I would happily take the under on Kawhi.
I would as well. I've Korkmaz at a little over 19. So okay. That would be somebody that I personally like the over on. Others, this could transition to somebody we haven't talked about. What the hell did you do with Marcus Morris's minutes today? Because that is something I stared at my screen with and struggled with a whole bunch.
Yeah. So I gave him 30, I believe. I had it significantly higher earlier in the day and walked it back a bit. Let me just double check it. No, I have him at 32 still. So I had him at 34 and brought it down to 32. I thought it was the opposite side. I think that the closing rotation was a bit of an anomaly because it was going well in game 3. I'd be very surprised if they go to that much Nick Batum at the 5 in lieu of Marcus Morris in that spot. It just becomes a really small lineup. But again, now that they've done it, it wouldn't surprise me if they do it again. But I don't think that is the most likely scenario moving forward. And the fact that Morris is 4,300 on DK, I don't even necessarily know if I mind all that much because I think at that price tag, it's worth the risk. $5,100 Morris on FanDuel, you kind of got to be right about it. And that's what's tricky to me. But I assume if this game is close, that he is in that closing lineup still.
So I looked at his ownership. He's very popular. And here's the minutes last 2 games for Marcus Morris, 37 and 22. I have no clue how much he's going to play. His minutes, even if we go back to last series, the minutes over these last handful of games, 42, 30, 33, 37, 22. Anything from 22 to 40 would not surprise me today. I just looked at Marcus Morris's ownership. I think there's considerable upside there. I could also see the downside after he played 22 minutes last game. I'm just going to align myself with the field on him.
He came out of my sim at 32 minutes, 0.4% lower in ownership than my sim results. So looks to be relatively neutral there. If you are nervous about his minutes on FanDuel, you have 3 other choices at power forward. So you just
it doesn't
go
matter.
ahead. No, not so much. Yeah, but I'm with you. That's one of the trickier spots. I guess Morris would be in that same discussion that I mentioned for Capella earlier, where if you knew his minutes, you'd be able to put a lot of other pieces together. Like if you know Morris is playing 36, you're probably a little bit more pessimistic on like the Terrence Manns of the world.
By the way, we didn't talk about, I didn't realize, did you see the Hawks starting lineup?
Hawks starting lineup: Kevin Huerter, John Collins, Clint Capella, Bogdan Bogdanovic, Trae Young.
Kevin Huerter.
What does that change for you? Yeah.
I was not expecting Kevin Huerter to start. I was expecting to start one of those shitty small forwards who is going to play anywhere from 5 to 25 minutes and score 0 fantasy points. Kevin Huerter, that makes him more appealing to me.
Yes. 5,200 on Fanduel for Huerter, 4,800 on Draftkings. I liked him before this, at least relative to ownership. I assume the ownership climbs slightly, but this doesn't strike me as the thing that's just going to like catapult him to the stratosphere. But I think that I would also have to bump his minutes from where I had him at 29 to probably something like 32 at that point. I think he's going to go under-owned.
Yeah, that's how I feel too. And also, I mean, his minutes last game, I think that a lot of people who are just looking at the 2-game slate and also the series are going to look at what happened last game and see, hey, Kevin Huerter scored 5 fantasy points. It's a fairly chalky play last time out. Played 23 minutes. Also got in foul trouble. Didn't play well when he was on the court. That's a pretty big outlier. And if you look at his games so far for the playoffs, there's been upside. His first 2 games of the series, he scored 29 and 30 fantasy points. There's no DeAndre Hunter there. So to me, I think that Kevin Huerter now is a much more appealing option than he was 10 minutes ago.
I completely agree with you. Let's go ahead and shout out our promo code NBA live before lock. One gigantic word. And let's be clear here. That is a gigantic word. You can get 15% off your first week of Awesemo Plus by using that promo code. And it's great. I wish that we could add a little bit of an extra thing on it so everybody knew that they were coming for myself and for Greg. I'm sure the promo code would climb to the top of all of our promo code lists, but unfortunately we have to let everybody else have a chance. So we just make it one generic code, but you can get 15% off of everything. It's 15% off of our Awesemo Plus Platinum. That covers every single sport we've got. And boy, oh boy, do we cover a lot of DFS sports. And there's only going to be more coming. NFL is right around the corner. NBA, obviously rounding out, baseball, NASCAR, MMA, golf, tennis, all the esports that I can't even remember at this point in time. We got a ton of it right now. You make sure you want to check it out. NBA Live Before Lock is the promo code. And we are brought to you by Odds Shopper. If you are trying to bet on sports and you're not using Odds Shopper, you are making a mistake. You can shop your lines, get an idea of where everything is, find better lines. You always want to take the best line you can find. That's not going to get you anywhere to be taking crappier lines. Every little bit of edge that you can get is important. You can track bets. You can get alerts when lines move for you. Excellent product. We are now going to touch on some of the player props that I grabbed directly from Odds Shopper today. I've got 4 of them. I've got one for each individual team. Are you ready?
I am ready.
So now you could browse these. Jordan's got them up on the screen right now. Don't tip him off, Jordan. Don't let him know what the real answers are. I'm just kidding.
I'm not looking at it anyway. I'm just looking at my numbers. Paul
George, over under 25.5 points.
That is
that's real points, by the way, just in case anybody's hearing me, not fantasy points.
That is an over for me. I have him at 26.9.
24% expected ROI on that bet, a 63% chance to win. That is one of the better over bets that you can make per Odds Shopper today. So our data is completely in line with you. I have not looked yet at what I have him at. So let me look. I've got him at 24.6.
So you're quite a bit lower.
I am. Feels about right. Like I wouldn't take that bet at that number. 9/10 of a point is not going to be enough value to beat the VIG. All right, we're moving on to the next one. Next player prop bet. Clint Capella. I think I know where this one's going. Over under 12.5 rebounds.
That's an under for me, except that's not one that I'd feel comfortable betting either. I don't have it that far under. And we talked about Capella before. There's such a wide range of outcomes here, and it's ultimately probably going to depend on whether it gets into foul trouble or not.
Does it matter to you if you get plus 110?
A little bit. I think that does at least make it plus EV, maybe, but still, I mean, that's a fairly high number for somebody who has, a pretty decent chance of getting into foul trouble against Embiid. It would just be a stay away for me.
Clint Capella over 12.5 rebounds, plus 110, 32% expected ROI, 63% chance to win. The third best over bet that you can make. And if we're being honest, it's probably the second best. Kevin Huerter under in rebounds was at the top. I would imagine that would at least slightly fall down given the news that he is starting.
What's the number?
Under 5.5, minus 160.
Oh, I would still, Kevin Huerter getting to 6 rebounds feels a lot, though. Let's see.
I have him at 2.9. So
yeah, I was going to say that's an egregiously high number. How many times in the playoffs do you think he's had 6+ rebounds?
How many times in his life has he had 6+ rebounds?
I could tell you that he had 0 in the playoffs. In the regular season, let's see.
It can't be a lot. We have it as a 93% chance to win.
It just really quickly eyeballing it, it looks like he did it 8 times in the regular season. That's a very high number.
Yeah, I agree. Well, there we go. Moving on to the next one. Donovan Mitchell, over under, and we've got 2 separate lines here, so feel free to take what you'd like. You can go over 4.5 assists at minus 150 or under 5.5 at plus 125.
I would take the under at the plus 125.
Let me sort this again just to make sure I'm in the right order. Donovan Mitchell, over 4.5 minus 150, 25% expected ROI, 75% chance to win that bet per Odds Shopper. I have Donovan Mitchell right now at 6.3 assists. So I am also happily taking that over.
Also, what was the VIG on the over 4.5?
You can get like plus 115. Sorry. Over 4.5 was minus 150.
And because I wasn't sure what the numbers were. I was like, could you bet the over and the under there and win on both and maybe middle? But yeah, so I would side towards the plus 125 for under 5.5.
And the final one, we're going big time here. Points plus rebounds plus assists on Joel Embiid. Best line we got out there right now. Oh, we're all over the map. We're going to call it 44.5.
That's a very efficient line, in my opinion.
I have it at 44.6.
Yeah, I was going to say that's almost exactly what I have.
I like it. You can see all of this at Odds Shopper. It's on the screen right now. Check it out. The site is gorgeous. It just makes you want to spend a little bit more time on it. So you guys should all check it out. We have 8 minutes to go until lock. It's the latest we've gone without taking any questions. So let's take some questions. But before we do, I see we're at like 500 and something likes. Let's run that number north of 600. Let's close this out strong. Premium Slack, get your questions in. YouTube chat. Just keep staying there, hitting the like button. That'll work too. Did we get any questions earlier? There we go. Tank Forever with the super chat. Tank Forever, I'm pretty sure you're in Premium Slack. You should have just tagged us. Anyway, appreciate the money, man. DK single entry. Last roster spot. Kevin Huerter or Royce O'Neal or any other 5K option you would recommend, not named Jackson or Ingles.
All right. So those are 2 of the other guys in a Tank's lineup there. So right now it is Huerter for me amongst those 2 guys, but I'm going to look at the pricing for everybody and see if there's somebody else that pops up in that price range. So yeah, that is Huerter for me.
Knowing the contest would be interesting. So it's Huerter over Royce O'Neal for me. I think that Batum would be really close.
I slightly prefer Huerter. And one thing I actually did while we were doing the show is I had Batum in a single entry lineup and had enough money to pay up for Huerter and just hand swapped it and changed that to Huerter.
I think that we see enough of an ownership discount on Huerter that I like that.
Huerter's my choice.
I'm with you. I don't Look, premium slack's pretty quiet right now. Lou Will or Shake Milton?
Shake Milton.
Yeah, I agree. Something bad happened if this has to be a Lou Will day.
Oh, yeah, that would it would be bad for me for sure. By the way, we're waiting for questions. Defensive play, all defense teams, travesty that I kind of glanced over for. Mikal Bridges not making a team, that is off in my opinion.
So who do you take out? You want to put somebody on, you got to take somebody off. So that would be what?
Butler because of the games missed.
Okay.
He missed a lot of games this year.
Man. I mean, I don't disagree, I guess. Okay, so well, here's a tricky question for you. So you're willing to have Thibault on there, correct?
Mm-hmm.
How many minutes do you think Thibault played in relationship to Jimmy Butler this year? Does games
probably
matter more to you than minutes?
No,
I don't know where I'm going with this. I'm just talking it through.
Yeah, no, I understand. I also think Thibault's a better defender than Jimmy Butler, though. Like, Thibault's ridiculous. I understand the overall volume would work against Thibault there, but I also just think he's so ridiculous on defense. Like, if Thibault started and played 30 minutes per game, he would be just the lock of all locks for first team all defense. And probably I would favor him to win Defensive Player of the Year at that point, too, because he would just have some silly defensive metrics.
By the way, it's like about 500 minutes. So I don't think that's too crazy. I'm perfectly fine with the Butler shout. I like the call. Seth Curry or Kevin Huerter on FanDuel. That's from Gerald.
Huerter.
Mr. Moneybags. Last guy in. 3K favors. Don't have $100 more. Bad idea. DK GPP. I mean, it sounds like it's your only idea. You have 5 minutes to go, and the only thing that you can put in is Derek Favors at this point. So, no, it's not a bad idea. I mean, Favors is the best 3K guy, if that helps.
Yeah, I'm trying to think what other option there even is.
Beverly's it.
Yeah, Beverly played 16 minutes last game, and a handful of them came in garbage time.
Your other options are Tony Snell, Mia One, DeMarcus Cousins, Okongwu.
I mean, the real answer is none of them. But yeah. I mean, if you don't want to change everything, then Favors.
Yeah, like the $3,100 tier with Terrence Mann, Thibault, even Lou Will to a degree. You know what? That's not as bad as it could be. At least it's Favors and not like, hey, I got 3K left. I got to go with Okongwu.
That's true. It's still not ideal though.
No, it's not. DK Priest, Royce or Morris in a FanDuel GPP.
Let's see.
I mean, that's such a GPP question too. My answer is Morris, but like Royce O'Neal's definitely not playing less minutes barring injury or true blowout fashion. I don't know what Marcus Morris is going to do. So depends on your risk tolerance.
If price is no issue at all, then Royce O'Neal for the 13% ownership discount. And I mean, I do have him projected for slightly more fantasy points than Marcus Morris, but he's also 700 more expensive. So as long as you just have the salary, Royce O'Neal.
I agree. FanDuel GPP. How do you feel about a Korkmaz fade at, these are his ownerships, fading Korkmaz to 4% and Huerter at 31%. Yeah, I don't really have much of an issue with that.
I'm just trying to make sure I understand this, but yeah, I mean,
what are your thoughts on playing Furkan Korkmaz in 4% of lineups on FanDuel and Kevin Huerter in 31%?
I mean, can't you play Huerter and Korkmaz? But I mean, I would play. I think 4% is way too low for Korkmaz personally.
I don't mind that at all on FanDuel. I don't like that price tag, but we also are different on Korkmaz tonight, so that should be where we're at.
Given that Huerter's starting, I do prefer Huerter at this point on FanDuel because there's only a $500 price difference. It's much different on DraftKings. There's a huge gap between them.
Right.
But I would still say that you should play more than 4% Korkmaz, but you have 90 seconds to change that. So that probably is what it is.
Best of luck to you. Royce O'Neal and Huerter or Morris and Ingles in a FanDuel single entry GPP?
Royce O'Neal and Huerter or Morris and Ingles. That is,
I think it's the first
Morris.
two.
That is Morris. That's going to be Morris and Ingles for me.
Whew. I thought that was going to be my answer, but I think it's Royce O'Neal and Herder for me. So that's just a question for the most part is like, how much better do you think Ingles is than Kevin Herder today? We didn't really talk about Joe Ingles.
Yeah, I mean, I think Ingles is a neutral play. Actually, I think he's going. I'm overweight to him a little bit on FanDuel, although it did come down with the Herder news. But still, I mean, I think both sides of that I don't have an issue with, and I think it's fairly close.
I was gonna say I think it's fairly coin flippy. So 7 minutes. 7:29 and 45 seconds. So what we're going to do is talk very slowly for 10 seconds until the show is over. But I do appreciate that on that last call for likes, we did fly north of that 600 number. I don't know if you guys could do it. If you're going to want to run it north of 700, you want to be fun. Now you're at 604. You're never going to get 96. You guys could never get 96 more likes on this video. I don't believe in you at all. I can't imagine that would ever work. You guys just don't have it in your hearts. You're quitters. Climbing. Anyway, that's all I've got. Greg, anything else you want to talk about? Anything you got to plug? Anything going on?
No, this is it for the day. We've got who are your leans for today? Which teams do you want to win? For me, it is the Jazz and the Sixers.
I would like it to be Clippers and Sixers.
Okay.
I am rooting for the Clippers in that series, and I think that I'm in a large minority.
Yes, it is. It's betting purposes for me.
No betting purposes for me whatsoever. I just think that if the Clippers can make the finals, that means they're probably playing really well. And I like the idea of Kawhi being in the finals as arguably the best player in the NBA at that point. To me, that's like the more appealing storyline for me.
Final shout out. Big Money, New Jersey just left us a super chat. He said, "Woo, thanks for the effort." Big Money NJ, we appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it. We're at 666 in likes. That's the perfect way to get out. That's the devil's number. We are out of here. Good luck tonight, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We're back at it again tomorrow. So come and hang out with us.